Starting.
The button has been pushed.
Mine.
Alrighty then.
Oh shit! It started mine.
I.
All right, great.
We're
Let's
here.
fucking talk about a plane.
We're here.
Talk
Hello and
about
welcome
Plane.
to
We
bonus
can talk
episode.
about this
No.
this season's hit movie, Plane, starring.
God damn it!
That
I
You know what
forget-
I'm doing, Roz? You know what I'm doing right now, Roz? You know what I'm doing right now? So, Roz, you left on Saturday,
Yes.
and you left some crispy, tasty beverages.
Oh yeah.
I have
Yeah, I did.
consumed, and I am drinking your beer, and it's delicious.
I'm thinking
Wow.
about.
For those of you at
movie
home, I'm
Plane.
drinking I'm drinking a heady topper, because we can get that in Philly regularly now. Oh,
Yes.
let's just get that crack. Oh, she's beautiful, and I'm thinking about how I'm depriving of Roz of it the entire time.
You know, I can also go to a store that has beer and purchase beer.
No,
Yeah.
no, you can't. We're recording.
It's
We're going.
More fun
you
when I
know.
drink your beer.
I'm no longer. I'm not 19 anymore, and also this podcast does actually make us a good amount of money.
You can't
So,
tell them that. They
this
have to
is
think
not
we're,
like-
we're,
Well,
we're
with these production
socialists.
values,
Yeah.
how
damn
could we
it.
possibly? It's a bonus episode. We got a guest. We got KD from War Takes back on after the success of the Rhodesia episode. How's it going?
Ooh, it's going good. I too am having a beverage. I'm having a Michelob Ultra, but I'm having it in a Stella Artois glass because I'm classy like that.
I'm
It's
gonna.
called dual power. You know.
Oh wow. All right. So, me, Roz, and Ward Takes are gonna fly over there, Alice, and led by Katie. We are going to start some sort of soccer riot.
Yeah, reasonable.
Roz and I will hold back because we're drinking heady toppers, and I'm not wasting that. So, Katie, you're kind of on your own here, but you do good. All right, bud.
You know what?
Should be fine.
You just have to channel Gerard Butler from the hit film Plane.
Plane box office revenue.
I don't know if anyone at home is familiar with the concept from Red Letter Media of the "Fuck You, It's January" movie, but if there was
Yes.
ever a "Fuck You, It's January" movie, it is Plane, starring Gerard Butler, now in theaters.
Yeah, if
Starring
you haven't
Gerard
seen
Butler as the plane.
or heard
This
of the
thing
movie
made $10
we're
million
talking about,
opening weekend. That is
I
not
highly
good.
recommend looking up the trailer for Plane, which we have kind of spoiled a bit because when I first saw it, I saw it with no information going in, and the laugh that came out of me when I saw that they had just titled it Plane.
Plane.
Which is such a, like-
I saw it for the first time watching football with Liam last weekend, and they just called it Plane. Oh my
Me too.
god!
I saw it watching
The budget was
football.
only like 20 million. That's actually not so bad.
I saw it watching football on Christmas Day, and I couldn't say this because I was with family and polite company, but I saw it and I just screamed in my head, "Fuck you, it's January!"
It's so like divine presence to be shot, you know, title to come later. Plane movie. But
Apparently,
hit-
more than half of the movie does not take place on a plane.
Yeah,
no,
no,
of course not. Why would
This
it?
fucking country.
We need to bring back a version of the Hays Code, but for titling movies like accurately and responsibly. I think if you're going to sell me on,
Yeah, snakes on a plane will be
You-
our
you-
gold
you-
standard moving
You suppose
forward.
maybe it does not refer to an airplane, but
If you're gonna
rather
make an incline plane
a
joke, I'm
plane-
gonna come over there and beat
no.
you.
I'm thinking like, but that also wouldn't make sense because
God.
it occurs on the Earth, which is round, so it's not a plane. I don't.
It's a plane of
I-
existence.
This
sure,
is true.
Yeah, I wish it
yeah.
the
weren't.
metaphysical plane. It's like
Anything's gonna play. My name down.
could also be into like the kind of tool plane, you know, like the thing that you use like a router, the thing you used to like
Oh yeah, so
file
you
a
can
thing flat.
level out
Yes.
some. Yeah, you can shave off some wood. There's
yeah.
that kind of plane. There's
Why can't we
As-
just watch Smokey and the Bandit?
No,
What
only
if
bad
what if
movies
instead
from
of
now on.
calling it Smokey and the Bandit, they called it Car and Truck?
Yeah, Alice, you should have us on to do Smokey and the Goddamn Bandit.
Yes,
The
fine.
greatest
Smokey
film
and the
ever
Bandit
made.
too.
The greatest movie ever. It's a good
amongst the
movie.
lists, amongst the list of possible planes that exist, we got the hand tool, we got the geometric concept, we got the metaphysical concept, we got the thing that Gerard Butler is on, and we have this. This is an F-104 Starfighter and me and
Why
KD
is it
have
calling me a
written
slur?
because it works for the U.S. Air Force, is why.
Yes.
Me and KD have written some slides explaining this plane to you two, which you are now obliged to suffer through because, as you say, this podcast has been remarkably commercially successful, and so you just have to deal with it. You
Thanks
just
for nothing,
can't.
Ross. You son of a bitch.
Yeah. Sorry, I dragged all y'all into this this 100+ episode ordeal.
Nightmare
Mhm.
adventure through the deepest, sickest parts of the human psyche, which is fucking tight. Speaking of which, Roz, you need to hang out so we can do our taxes this year.
Oh yeah, we should do that.
Yeah,
Great. You guys are going to get busted by the IRS.
or not, or shut
No.
up. We could talk about that later.
We're gonna be fine.
We'll talk
Not
about
gonna
that
get-
after the show.
We're not gonna get arrested. I'm not going back to prison, man.
Just begin every interaction with a federal agent that way and see, just enjoy the directions that takes you in. Next slide.
I'm gonna have to go quickly and quietly, which is not something I'm good at doing.
Yeah. America, you may have heard this, won the Second World War single-handedly.
Yes.
Yes.
And because it's America, it immediately set about thinking, how are you going to win World War III? Which obviously
nuclear
was...
bombs.
Yeah,
A lot of them.
nuclear bombs.
Yeah. MacArthur did nothing wrong. Now,
I think he may have done a few things wrong.
Remember how you said you had a wildly successful podcast?
Here we go.
I plan to do in the event we get canceled the sort of turbo cancellation option.
God.
I have 2
Oh,
poison
God.
pill episodes that I would release Rogue.
Oh, God.
Oh god.
Just to have them on a dead man switch.
Yeah.
I feel
the-
my
the-
stomach ulcerating. You're turning
The
me into
nuclear
sort of
bombings were good, and Israel is good. Actually, those are the 2 episodes.
Those
I'm
are the 2
assuming.
episodes, yeah. No, yeah.
Oh my God. I would genuinely rather that you decided to rank the races. That would
Well, this episode's on phrenology, but actually how it's good.
Yeah.
We
Why would they call it a pseudoscience? It has science in the name, duh.
That's right. We get too irony pilled, and we just start saying things that are bad are good. Actually,
Those are the poison pill, sort of my letters of last resort. The nuclear subs are no longer in contact, and I have to get us canceled absolutely as fast as possible, and then disavow any knowledge of our existence.
So, World War III was going to take place between the United States and the Soviet Union, seen here kissing. And
Yes.
That's nice.
yeah,
That's a lot
for
of
them.
wine. God damn.
it's a lot
And
of
they just
tongue,
beat
is
the
what
Nazis.
it is. Yeah,
You know, so
I
you
mean,
gotta
how
have
else
to
are you going
drink.
to celebrate?
Mhm.
I also like that this is initiated by the Soviet major here. Like, he's got the dude in a headlock. It's a real socialist fraternal kiss hours.
I'm gonna say the
Yes.
guy doesn't look like he's hating it.
No, absolutely
cares?
not.
No, I listen. If I had just watched Dachau inmates beat their guards to death with shovels, and
Mhm.
at least anecdotally their bare hands, I'd be kissing the Soviets.
Yeah.
There's no
It's
shame.
sort of like
He's
the
very
weird
handsome.
surreal vibes of the sort of end of the Second World War, where it's
I wish they
we've
had beards.
we've just stumbled across sort of the evidence of one of the worst crimes in human history. On the other hand, we found a bunch of goofy Nazi designs they never really got off the drawing board. Do you want to drive the prototype Kettenkrad and kiss a dude on the mouth? And your answer
Do
is
that, but also
yeah, of
don't
course.
go in the plane that literally turns you into what I can only describe as pilot jelly.
Yes, the comet.
The plane
So-
that turns you into Gerard Butler.
From the movie Plane.
so towards the end of the Second World War, various of boffins were inventing the jet engine, something which became tremendously successful. And this
We
led
know about the 262. Shut the hell up.
and this led to the birth of the jet fighter, and that was going to define the sort of curvatures of air combat after that. So essentially, right, you get this period where it's a lot like the Civil War. Like, you know how the Civil War has this like mismatch of tactics and technology where everybody has rifles, but they're still lining up in like close order and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And then World War One, sure. Yes.
Yeah. Well, so like the Korean War is basically like we're gonna do sort of air combat doctrine designed around like the P-51 Mustang or whatever, but we've got a shitload of jets now.
Yeah.
And
Trying to get throat from this MiG-15 here.
Yeah.
Well, like all
It's
sort
a
of
bonus
early,
episode. I can say whatever the hell I want.
all early jets, all that first generation of jets, kind of like the first intermediate generation, all kind of looked the same in that they were just like an open jet engine you strapped a cockpit and wings to. But I was just like saying is like because this is the first time you really get jet on jet dogfights. Because despite the fact that the Germans. You've already had, I think, talked with Mia Mulder about how the Me-262 was not all it's cracked up to be, but it was at least revolutionary. It was the first jet fighter that was introduced en masse, and the Allies never really, even though they introduced jets late war, there were never really dogfights, though. That didn't stop us like kicking the shit out of them. One of my favorite Chuck Yeager quotes is, "The first time I saw a jet, I shot it down."
Yeah, but
I like to think that no, that's a war crime. Never mind.
It's a bonus.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say the image of Chuck Yeager simply teabagging a dead Luftwaffe pilot.
Well, if I remember correctly, he did actually shoot him down while the guy was landing. So, but I'm not sure if that's a war crime. Maybe it's tad unsportsmanlike, but they were Nazis, so who gives a fuck?
Exactly.
Yeah, who gives a shit? Right.
We'll get to what some of those Nazi Me-262 pilots did next.
Oh yes,
join NASA. Yeah.
Yeah, but so in the Korean War, you had this thing top right, the F-86 Sabre, which got its dick kicked in by the MiG-15, whose NATO reporting name we will not be saying, even though it's a bonus episode.
It is the Big 15 slur.
Yeah. The MiG-15.
God damn it!
It was a different time.
I have a fun story actually that I've never got to tell on this podcast. Speaking of Nazis, so my grandfather, may he lie in eternal peace wherever he is, worked for NASA in the very, very, very early days, so the Mercury program and so on. And one day they brought in Werner von Braun.
Oh boy!
And my granddad was Jewish and one of the only Jews working at NASA and knew what Mr. von Braun had did. And they all, these being NASA guys, stood up and went Heil Hitler whoop, except for my granddad, who apparently sat so petulantly he was asked to leave the room and then didn't, and simply took his lunch and went home.
Fantastic.
And stormed out and knocked a bunch of shit over.
Hats fucking off to Liam's grandpa.
Yeah. So this MiG-15 is very successful. And the reason why it's successful
the MiG-15
is...
friend, right? It's the friend. We're not calling it the main name.
Yeah, we'll call it that.
Yeah. So
the MiG-15 Flyers fan.
Uh-huh.
Because I heard the F
the Fragile.
Yeah.
It's more maneuverable, right? Like it's a sort of it's a much more capable dogfighter than Sabre is.
I'll be a little bit of an F-86 defender. I'm not going to argue that the MiG-15 isn't better, but I have a soft spot for it. It's not a bad plane. The MiG-15 is just better.
Sure. It's the whole time the CIA, in between giving everybody LSD, is trying like fuck to get its hands on a MiG-15, which they eventually do. The guy defects with one. But I have a quote here from Air Force Lieutenant General Charles Chick Cleveland, because you got to have a dumb nickname to be an Air Force officer. You have to remember that the little MiG-15 in Korea was successfully doing what all the Focke-Wulfs and Messerschmitts of World War II were never able to do: drive the United States bomber force right out of the sky.
Well, you know who you can thank in part for that? The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
You're
North
welcome.
of Ireland. It's the north of Ireland.
Because you know what the Klimov VK1 engine in the MiG-15 was?
Yeah, it's a Rolls-Royce Neen or something like that. Because we gave the Attlee Ministry gave a bunch of these Rolls-Royces, these like very advanced jet engines that had basically only a military use to the Soviet Union on the basis of trying to build goodwill Stalin took one look at this and went, "These people are idiots. Immediately copy this," which they did. And so that's a Rolls Royce in that MiG-15.
He said to like Mikhail Gurevich, one of the heads of MiG, he was like, "What kind of idiot's going to give us his fucking secrets?" And then they gave them to them.
So the Sabre is fine. It's just it's Americans doing American stuff, which is you overbuild and it's complex and technologically advanced. And
The
pilots hate
M16
it.
is a good rifle. The M16 is a good rifle. I say as I'm dragged away.
Yeah, but it needs like dialing in, and it needs stuff like this. Whereas the MiG-15 sort of like works out of the box because it's built with guys with hammers.
Yes.
And also bear in mind, all of these pilots on both sides came up during World War II, more or less. And so if you started your career flying a Mustang or something like that, and you're suddenly you're riding this jet engine that has, the finest technology of the 1950s in it, it's baffling to you. You go ultimate boomer mode. And so what you want is a fighter with a gun on it, with none of this like gay radar shit.
Radar, one might say.
Yeah.
Colonel Gabby Gabreski, who railroad connection here, was president of the Long Island Railroad for a couple of years and then gave up in disgust.
Thankless job right there at Long Island Railroad in the 50s.
Yeah, worse than being a pilot in the Korean War. The thing that he says is that he wants to be able to like sight enemy aircraft by sticking a piece of chewing gum to the windshield. That's the sort of like level of technological accuracy we want. So this becomes like a new specification, right? This is the basis for the Air Force going to manufacturers and saying, we want a new plane that does this. We want a big, small, fast, dumb fighter. And we get several entrants. The first of which, next slide, please. This guy. I love this.
Oh, boy.
This is Republic Aviation's entry. The hysterical looking and sounding XF-91 Thunderceptor.
I love this.
Some kind of
Thunderceptor, yes!
some kind of like elongated walrus.
Every time I look at it, you know what I see? I see David Byrne from the Talking Heads in the big oversized suit. And you might find yourself flying in a goofy jet.
Surprisingly good David Byrne. So as you may be able to tell from this, manufacturers are experimenting with different wing shapes. And aerodynamics is still kind of a novel science in the way that we would understand it today. And so all of this shit's going through like iterations and wind tunnels. And Republic tries this. They do a test flight with it. They build 2 prototypes. The second prototype, the tail melts during the test flight.
It's fine. It's fine.
So not that aerodynamic.
No.
Or is it too aerodynamic?
The fuel capacity for
because
this.
you wouldn't have friction building up enough heat to melt the tail.
Okay, blinded me with science here.
Yes.
So,
Blinded me with science.
This will be an important consideration later, but the fuel capacity for this, 25 minutes flying time.
That's not very good. That's
not very good.
GTI at VMAX rate, yeah.
I mean, when you think about how long a nuclear war would have lasted, I mean, in the grand scheme of things.
That's true.
It's enough to fly out of range and blow the bomb and then come back and land on what's left of the runway.
So and that's the end of that chapter.
This gets a sort of like extremely loud incorrect buzzer from the US Air Force. No sale. Second contender. This is North Americans F-107A.
What is going on here?
That is a big-ass air intake over the cockpit.
Wow.
It almost looks like they took a plane and strapped another plane on
another
top.
Plane. That's I thought this had like a parasite on top of it.
That's going to be next year's hit film, Plane 2, 2 planes.
Plane 2, plane harder.
But they hadn't really figured out how an air intake was meant to fit into the shape of an airplane yet. And so you get like, okay, we don't put it like on the bottom like a MiG-15. We put it, well, why not put it on the top instead and have it run the whole length of the thing? This is actually okay as a plane. It's like quite practical, but it commits the cardinal sin It looks goofy as fuck. It's also sort of like by necessity, like a bit more. It's better as a fighter bomber than a pure fighter because it's so large. It's like huge. The other thing about this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think you're about to say what I was about to say.
The other thing about this is about the time that ejection seats are being developed. And you know, imagine ejecting out of this thing. You have a jet engine.
I got an easy solution here. You just eject the engine before the guy goes out.
Oh, there you go.
I can see no problem with having the entire engine on a fighter jet be capable of being ejected with the push of a button.
Yeah, the engine fall off button that you have anxiety from fear of flying about.
Yes.
Yeah,
This
so
one actually has it.
if you try and eject into this, you get sucked into the engine and killed, which is not great. So
kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah. Extremely loud, incorrect buzzer. The Air Force, no sale. They will come back to this later. They will later buy F-107s, as sort of like a courtesy thing, but not for this specific thing. Next slide, please. We are the one we know least about. This is the Northrop N-102 Fang, and the furthest it ever got was this sort of like plywood prototype model. It looks great though.
It does not commit the cardinal sin of looking goofy. This one looks cool.
Yeah. Like the Army, I got it up put in a real tough position recently choosing the successor to the Black Hawk in that they had to choose between two aircraft that were making the cardinal sin of looking goofy because one was a tilt rotor and the other was a coaxial with a push rotor.
What? Oh
yeah.
They both look like absolute ass.
They look like absolute ass, right? And they went with the tilt rotor. So they went with the Black Hawk Osprey, which I'm sure will have no problems whatsoever.
It will have watch this space.
Watch this. You can have me back on for that one. No, actually, you should have Francis and Nate back on for that one. It'll be a nice sort of sequel to the Osprey episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, one thing I like about the Fang here is it looks a lot like an FA-18. You can kind of see that, like, you have this idea.
Was the direction they wanted to go.
Yeah,
looks like an F-18 crossed with a French Mirage.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a big delta wing.
I like it though.
But Northrop isn't fast enough with this. Like, maybe it's a good idea. We don't know because by the time they've built this thing, they get outpaced by. Next slide, please. What if a Swedish man was American?
Oh boy.
This is a dude called Kelly Johnson. He designed, amongst other things, the U-2, the spy plane. Also built
band.
Area 51.
Yeah, we could live without the band. Bono, you son of a bitch.
Incidentally, Kelly is like a nickname, I think, because his actual first name is Claire, not to dead name him. But he got made fun of too much in school. so he was like, okay, no, fuck it. I'm changing it.
This is back when dudes could be like named Leslie, though. I mean,
I mean, we just had a Air Force colonel dude earlier named Gabby.
Oh, no.
It was just a different time.
Katie, you dropped out.
Tell me we didn't.
Is everyone else there?
Did we?
Shit.
Did we?
Yep.
Well.
Oh, I'm back. Sorry, that was my bad. I'm back.
Okay.
But I'm not sure where we left off. But I mean, I think we left off. We were talking about his name, and we did have a colonel named Gabby earlier. So I mean, I guess that was just the style at the time.
That's true. You could just have a girl name. It was not weird at that time. But also the other thing about this American dude, born and raised in America, speaks with an American accent. But somehow, to his boss at Lockheed, he is forever Swedish. So last name's Johnson, which is like so anglicized. But he's like, the thing he says about him is that damned Swede can actually see air.
Count on Americans to find a way to be racist against Swedish people.
We're a good people. We're a hardy folk.
You know who he kind of looks like? You know who would play this guy in the movie? Brendan Gleeson.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm looking at this guy. He does look like a squarehead to me.
All right, why don't we settle down there, Norway? You want to be a client state again, where you're well on your way?
Bring back the Union.
He founds Lockheed's Skunk Works division, which still makes all of the like secret fun stuff. Incidentally, it's named for a comic book reference because everyone back then was nerds. It was initially Skunk Works, but that was
Wow.
copyrighted. And
sounds-
he was sort of
Oh,
this
how
like
that's changed.
yeah, he was this sort of like titan of aerospace. He had like 14 rules of doing business, plus a secret 15th rule, which was starve before doing business with the Navy.
That makes sense.
Smart
to me.
man.
Knowing what I know
Yeah.
about the United States Navy, this man was a fucking genius.
Yeah.
But the basis of that rule was they don't know what they want, and they will like waste all of your time and money making you figure it out.
Nothing has changed at all.
But so he outmaneuvers all of the previous three, the Thunder Scepter, the F-107, the N-102, all of these are sort of effortlessly, bureaucratically outmaneuvered by Kelly Johnson. And his idea, which we got on the next slide, in a wind tunnel. The F-104. I should say the XF-104, because this is like
these things change a fair amount between prototype and production phase. Sometimes not so much, but sometimes enough that let me put it this way. Sometimes enough that they need separate Wikipedia articles.
as this has. I like the guy who's just wandered in here and is just sort of
Just
like
chilling.
taking in the view. Yeah. So
Probably fine.
if you recall the original brief here, the chewing gum windshield thing, this is meant to be simple, fast, small, kind of like a muscle car, actually, is the analogy I would use. You put a big engine in it, it goes very fast. You know, like how like fuck, what's the Dodge muscle car called?
The Charger, the
or
Challenger.
The Charger,
the
yeah.
Challenger.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Charger has like one trick, which is like 0 to 60 in like, you know,
It's
nothing.
been ruined
and it
by
just-
being a cop car now.
Straight
Yeah.
line
Yes.
speed. That's all you need.
Yeah, exactly the same with this.
Corners are for
And-
pussies.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about interceptors too, as opposed to fighters.
That basically is the concept behind an interceptor is quarters are for pussies.
Yeah.
Turning is for pussies.
Back when we thought that the way that a nuclear war would happen would be like massed bomber formations come and drop like unguided nuclear bombs on you. The point of an interceptor was you have this plane that like goes from being in the hangar to 30 seconds later in the air shooting down those bombers. And then a minute after that it runs out of fuel, but that's fine. It doesn't need a lot of like loitering time. It's meant to get up, get into combat, and then don't worry about it because nuclear war has happened.
If there's a spectrum between fighter and interceptor, fighters prize maneuverability while interceptors prize speed, and that's sort of the spectrum between fighter and interceptor when it comes to planes that shoot down other planes.
Yeah. But it's interesting to me because like the doctrine here of like what do you do after you shoot down the bomber, or the bomber equivalent, what do you do after you drop your nuclear weapons? It's sort of like in militaries that like formalized everything, is sort of written down as don't worry about it. And I really like that sort of like intellectual lacuna, right? Of you are supposed to get killed here, but we're not going to just say that.
It'd be uncouth.
Yeah, for sure. And so this is brought in as a fighter, but it's sort of like it falls a bit between two stools, you know?
Yeah. Because the Air Force was working on purpose-built, like sort of interceptors that were designed from the bottom up to shoot down Russian bombers. Those are the sort of the Delta. Yeah, it's the F-102 and F-106 and sort of the Delta series, but they had been delayed. So this thing kind of gets, which was designed as a fighter, kind of gets drafted into being an interceptor because it's good enough to do that.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So they put this thing into testing. I love this photo, by the way.
Well, this is what they should have had on the F-107.
Yes.
You void the engine.
This is my favorite detail about this. They changed this pretty quickly, but the initial prototypes had an ejection seat that fired downward. And
I can think of a
Ooh.
lot of ways that can go wrong.
well, it's not what you call 0-0 capable, right? Like if you fire the ejection seat when it's on the ground, you're going to fucking Australia, you know?
Right.
Um,
I'm not gonna lie, Alice. When I first saw you put this into the slide deck when we were first drafting it, I thought this guy was in a wheelchair. I was like, oh, it's
Yeah,
handy
me too.
capable.
Yeah.
it's like the world's first wheelchair accessible air superiority fighter.
What they should have done to make this still
Sponsored
work is
by
rather
Raytheon.
than the chair moving, the whole airframe moves away from the chair.
Like the disintegration of my Jeep Cherokee. Yes.
You just have a bunch of sort of like space shuttle style like explosive bolts that just disintegrate the aircraft around you in like perfectly
Yes.
separated pieces.
Just like the Blues Brothers car.
Yeah.
Mercedes built gull wings like that where they had explosive bolts in the doors in case you rolled.
That's cool. I mean, that's more advanced than fucking the Tesla that locks you in when it loses power, and you just
No, the Mercedes is just a bomb. Germans know how to build them.
Look, like it may be a bomb, but if you leave it in a garage for a month, it's not going to grow an ecosystem on it.
Right.
safety bomb.
I
Safety
can't
But
wait
so-
for Elon to come out with the car that kills you instantly.
Yeah.
I think he already has. So
It's still a beta. They're still working to that.
yeah. So they do their right stuff, Chuck Yeager shit. I think they actually test this at Area 51, although I might be wrong about that. Somewhere in the desert. And they do a
Either
lot of
that
like,
or like Edwards. It's somewhere in the desert.
So and they do their like real fast desert flights. And this is an incredibly fast aircraft. This is the first combat aircraft capable of Mach 2 flight, which is not a speed, but a sort of a relative thing. But it's very fast. It's also the only aircraft in history to simultaneously hold the world's speed and altitude records, which it got at the same time. And again,
Yeah, you get it up to Mach 2, and then you point it upwards, and you're like, let's see when the ballistic trajectory sort of.
Yeah,
Oh.
well, I mean, this
First
is
plane to also be a ballistic missile.
they did this with shit like the X-20 dinosaur and stuff like that. The idea of like, well, what if instead of like building a rocket spacecraft, what if we just have a plane that just goes really, really fast and then tilts up? And the answer is you almost kill Chuck Yeager, and he gets very mad at you, and you have to stop doing that.
Yes.
We will talk more about that later.
But so this ends up being...
You can get to space, but good luck circularizing that orbit.
Doing some interesting space plane experiments in Kerbal Space Program like that. But so this is a tremendously capable aircraft in some ways. And strangely, it ends up being, for something that was designed as a fighter, something that works a lot better as an interceptor. It's very sort of like unintentionally designed in that way. But next slide, please.
Okay, I just want to say this one was not me.
No,
Not saying necessarily I
this was me.
disapprove of it, but
No, I put this in here because we got to talk about what this thing was meant to do when it encountered the enemy, which was to kill them with weapon systems. What were those weapon systems? So initially they wanted a gunfighter, right? Because that's what fucking Gabby Gabreski, president of the Long Island Railroad, wanted.
Right.
You put a big gun on it. On the right here, if we sort of temporarily quarantine ourselves, we look at the right side of this slide. If you think of like a minigun, this is like the first modern interpretation of like that sort of Gatling gun rotary barrel technology. This is an M61 Vulcan.
which has not really been improved on since. It's one of those things like the M2, where it's just like, okay, I guess we just peaked. This is just what it is.
We've done it.
All right, we built the best gun.
A guy in a check shirt and like boots just put one of these
It's
in a
like
plane.
Abe Vigoda. Why is Abe Vigoda loading up
Abe
a minigun?
Vigoda. Abe Vigoda designed the perfect gun. If you look at the bandolier over his shoulder with a belt over his shoulder, you can see the size of the rounds this thing fires. It's a weapon that's meant to kill aircraft really quickly. And so they put one of these.
Abe Vigoda, of course, the gun lasted almost as long as he has.
Yeah. So they put
Wait,
one
is
of these
he still alive?
think
Oh
so.
God! Now you have me wondering.
Yeah.
Abe Vigoda. 2016.
Oh,
Damn.
god damn it. That one got
R.I.P.
past
to a
me.
real one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so
We'll always remember his gun, though.
yeah. Vigoda gun. The M61 Vigoda. So they put one of these on the F-104 or the XF-104, take it up for a test flight, try and fire it. First time they fire it, it explodes the front of the plane.
Huh.
Saves weight. That's good.
Yeah.
Job well done,
Not
boys.
good for aerodynamics, though.
To be fair, most very early development of most guns, whether they be on planes or in your hands, usually very early stages of development, most of them explode at some point. So
Yeah.
maybe you just shouldn't be flying when you try to test if it's going to explode or not.
It has some sort of like weird flight characteristics too. Like when you fire it, it sort of like jiggles the whole plane, which is presumably an uncomfortable sensation.
Oh, the plane jiggler.
Yeah. But so this is the main armament, and then shortly after this, the US gets very heavily into stolen, well, not even stolen, let's say paper-clipped German guided missile technology.
How about that?
And invents the AIM-9 Sidewinder, anthropomorphized here as a noise musician girl's big tits because it makes a noise. It makes the fucking brr noise. It makes noise.
Yeah.
That noise is part of how it knows where it is and where it isn't.
The missile knows where it is.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's fucking great, to be honest. I mean, they're still using it
another
today.
one that's still being used. They're up to variant X now. They're almost out of letters. They're gonna need to come up with a replacement before they get to Z.
You have to go
Do
to
they all
like
have-
Excel
do they all
style
have,
AA.
Do they all have big titty anime girls associated
Oh,
with
yeah.
them, or how does that work?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
But it's funny. It's funny. This thing has become wildly successful. But first of all, it delayed actually the F-104 coming into service because at the last minute they were like, wait, we got to make sure it fires this thing now. But also, it initially not very reliable. This was a problem with most first generation infrared missiles. During the 6-Day War, they kind of like they I don't want to say traumatized, but they basically Israeli pilots got once bitten, twice shy for them because basically every time they shot one and they had a 50-50 chance of just dropping off, and they would call them in Hebrew badon, which is the same word as fuel tank because it would just drop off like a fuel tank.
I'll do it.
There is
But
a
they got there.
detail. There's a funny story that I like about this, which is the Soviets were able to copy the technology in the Sidewinder because of one of these failures where the missile fires, the warhead does not detonate, and it embeds in the plane, and this Soviet
Jesus.
pilot comes back to base. Chinese pilot, I think.
It was
comes
a
back to
Chinese
base.
like MiG-15, I think. It got embedded
Yeah.
there because we had rushed them to Taiwan during the first or second Strait crisis. Taiwanese pilot fires it at a Chinese MiG. It gets lodged in the MiG intact, does not explode. The Chinese guy flies it back, and since they're still on good terms with the Soviets, they let the Soviets have it, and that's how they get their first generation air-to-air
It's a
missile.
nervous landing, apart from anything else. And
I
then
hope he got the order of something.
Yeah.
once it's on the ground, you got to do a kind of like bomb removal surgery from this plane.
But yeah, not very reliable, and so much so that Israeli pilots for years would train for gun kills first because they would not trust air-to-air missiles. The first kill in an F-15 is a gun kill by an Israeli pilot because they didn't
Jesus.
trust missiles because they're just fucking weirdos.
There is also a recurring theme here, which is that ever since they first invented the big titty anime girl, Air Force officers of every country have been trying to take guns off of the plane, because that's annoying and old and grimy, and I like to think of myself as a beyond visual range knight of the sky sort of thing, and shooting a guy that doesn't really figure into that calculus. And every time they do it, pilots hate it. It's like I think the F-35 had to give them the concession of, we will give you a gun you can mount to the outside if you promise you
think-
never use it.
It's
What?
they have that on the B variant, which is the Marines VTOL variant. I think the A and C variants do have an internal cannon.
What if they put the gun in the missile? And then you
Missile gun.
fire the missile at the other airplane, and then it starts shooting at it.
Well, they already have gun pods, so you just put a rocket engine on gun pods and have them fly off like missiles.
Perfect. $1 trillion idea. Patent pending. Patent pending. We are now an arms dealer.
Yeah, we found the solution here.
Oh God, Eisenhower warned me about this.
WTYP wardogs.com.
I am going to pentagon.gov and I am going to the contact us tab going, I have had a $1 trillion idea. And once it's successful,
200,000.
Yeah, and once it's successful, some artists can make an anime girl of it. Next slide,
Hell
please.
yeah.
So this is your slides. This is
part one of, I think, maybe two about what's actually kind of wrong with this thing. Because we heard a lot of things about it's got some things going for us. It is not without its issues, especially early on. Now, I'm taking mine here. I'm not an engineer or an aerodynamicist, so some of this stuff I might be describing incorrectly, but I'm going to do my best.
You're on the read from the Wikipedia podcast. You're fine.
Yeah. Well, like in defense of that, like so many things in as long as you check the sourcing, so many things in Wikipedia just say what you would find if you had gone out and find 15 different sources anyway. Just check the sources. Anyway, high wing loading. It gave it, which this would increase when it had weapons and things hanging off the wings. It would give it a tendency to just decide suddenly it was going to pitch up, and its angle of attack would just increase drastically. This would be followed by uncontrolled yawing and rolling, which is typically
sometimes it just tries to kill you by like flying upwards. It wants to go to space. It wants to make you an astronaut, whether you like it or not.
Right.
Exactly. They tried to fix this they added automatic pitch control and a stick shaker and stick pusher, which is like one of those things where if you start to go towards stall sort of inclination, you see this a lot on commercial aircraft as well. Pilots with those sometimes just manually ignore this, despite the fact that the aircraft's manual said do not ignore this.
Baby. No, that's a nightmare. But I've had the stick back the whole time.
I describe this like the reason things like this happen is because in my perception, pilots, especially fighter pilots, are the dumbest smart guys on the planet. Because they have to know things like a certain amount of math and technical aptitude and things in order to be operating an aircraft or a machine of this complexity. But they also get to the point where they're just so confident in abilities that even though they know logically they shouldn't do things, their reaction is just, well, I'm just built different.
Yes.
Smartest dumb guys on the planet. Sorry, go ahead, Alice. You were saying something.
Well, also that especially once we got into like the age of the jet fighter, the range of like possible thinking time, reaction time was compressed to the point that it sort of becomes vibes in a lot of ways anyway.
There's a lot of superstition involved with flying a jet aircraft, I think.
Yeah.
Gotta beseech the tech priests.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're all evangelicals.
Yeah. Well, we can blame Focus on the Family for that.
Yeah.
One of the smartest investments they made moving to Colorado Springs. So it's got the stick pusher, which is great. If it decides to go to space, the machine itself will physically punch the stick forward and be like, no, you don't. It's like at war with itself for a second, which is great.
Also has an issue with what is called T-tail flutter. This is illustrated by this diagram on the left, which is showing it occurring with an air. This is happening with an Airbus A400M cargo plane. I'm not sure if you're familiar with aircraft. It should not do that. Basically, they call it flutter, but really, literally the wings and the tail just start flexing, and this would happen at transonic speeds because of the way of the F-104 center of gravity relative to where like the engine and stuff was actually attached to the fuselage. So like its tail would just flex, and it really shouldn't do that.
Is this an exaggerated diagram to show sort of what's happening, or is this actually how much like it twists?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I didn't think to check that when I got it. I want to think that this is just how much it flexes because that's both hilarious and horrifying.
I mean, it is weird how much planes can flex, but I think this is a sort of non-survivable flight configuration here.
Yeah, no, let me put it this way. I wouldn't want to be on it if it was doing that.
This
No.
is true. Yes.
It was also the first aircraft to use the new J79 engine we have here from General Electric, which would go on, another thing that would go on to be wildly successful. They would install 2 of these on the F4 Phantom II, which is one of my favorite aircraft of all time.
It's a big
Um,
dumb muscle car engine.
But it had a new feature. This was called Variable Incident Compressor Stator Blades, TM copyright patent, which under the right conditions, this could cause an engine failure on takeoff, basically because it would send false readings from sudden temperature changes. And you don't really want the engine just suddenly failing on takeoff. You kind of need that to take off. Um, Another problem, little quirk it had, the thrust nozzles, which you see there, the variable thrust nozzles are the things you see open and close to, for when a jet's going into like full afterburner. You could just open without being told to. It just decide it wants to open, which
Yeah,
will
sure.
result in a drastic loss of thrust, which if you were at low altitudes, that's unrecoverable. You're not pulling up at that. They did eventually fix that, but it took apparently, according to Kelly Johnson, it took them like 9 years to finally fix it.
To stop the engine that like dumps all of its power out of it instantly.
It went on to become a great engine, but it had a lot of teething issues. Like it would just sometimes the F-104 would just get afterburner blowout right on takeoff, and sometimes the engine just wouldn't start. So
there's kind of a broader point here, which is that a lot of the stuff that we talk about is sort of, it's unfair in a way, right? Because the F-104, for reasons we'll get to, but including these, is a bad aircraft, right? But all of the problems that it had allowed the stuff that used like all of its technology to be good aircraft. And it's sort of like it's like a pharmacos. It's like a sacrificial lamb in that way. And it sucks for it because you just go, all of this stuff was eventually made good using lessons learned on this, but it still sucked. And planes, we talked about this a bit on EDSA as well. Planes like cars, talked about superstition, get a reputation, and this is a plane with a bad reputation. But next slide, we'll talk about the primary consumer, the people who asked for this in the first place, the United States Air Force. They bought them,
and their opinion of them was generally just meh. Like they had to ground them 3 months into service because they had accidents with the engine and the gun. Like the gun was just the gun that loved to explode, and the engine was just the engine that loved to stop being an engine. Out of all the Century series of fighters, like all those F-100s, various like F-100 series of fighters, it had the highest accident rate in Air Force service. By the time they phased it out, they lost 25.2 over 100,000 flight hours. We'll compare that to say like 16 for the F-100 Super Sabre, about 10 for the F-101 Voodoo. It had a high accident rate. But even without the accidents, they were kind of over it from the moment they got it. They only ended up buying about a little shy of 300 of these, which, when you look at how many they bought of other jets during the Cold War, that's like nothing.
Yeah, in full military industrial complex mode, they're like, we'll take 300.
They originally were going to buy 700. Part of this was the air combat doctrine, as Alice sort of alluded to earlier on, was changing. They were getting to a phase where they were favoring interceptors and fighter bombers over fighters. They thought the age of dogfighting was just kind of over. Something that would not come back to bite them in Vietnam when they found out flying super high-speed fighters, interceptors that couldn't really maneuver against subsonic MiGs that could maneuver really well was not a recipe for success. Also, they didn't have guns anymore.
Because that's unfashionable.
They did send this to Vietnam, and it did not get a single air-to-air kill whatsoever, despite flying a bunch of missions. Though it still managed to, they still managed to lose, I think, like 15, 14 of them, despite the fact it never got a kill. Some of these were accidents.
My KD ratio in Call of Duty.
Some of these are accidents. Some were shoot downs. My favorite one was an F-104 strayed over the Chinese border and was shot down by a Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy J-6 fighter, which in itself is a MiG-15, which in itself is just an improved MiG-15. So it was literally shot down by the thing it was designed in response to. And then two F-104s crashed into each other looking for the plane that got shot down.
Oops.
And that's kind of just like the coda to its service. Like not long after this, it was pulled out of Vietnam. It was retired from the active duty Air Force by 1969.
The Air Force is just like you're just embarrassing yourself at this point.
It was only in active duty service for like 11 years, and by like 1972, 73, the Air National Guard didn't even have them anymore. So it's just like they had it, and they decided they were just kind of done with it. And well, yeah, we'll get a little bit more into that in the next slide.
If you want to see a cope about this, the like official U.S. Air Force history of the F-104 in Vietnam says, yeah, okay, they didn't shoot anything down, and yeah, we did still lose some anyway, but they played a valuable role in protecting AWACS planes, like airborne early warning radars, and thanks to them, we never got one of those shot down. So
I mean, I'd respect them more if they were just like, well, you win some, you lose some,
Yeah. And
Instead,
crucially, do not put in the Wikipedia that we were mad. Don't write that we were mad.
It's the tiger repellent rock, it's specious reasoning. So I just put in a little interim slide here next up of what it looks like in National Guard livery, just because I think it looks good.
I miss when we just used to like not even put like we don't put Air National Guard specific stuff on planes anymore. I liked it better when they just used to do that because it made it seem like every state had their own Air Force.
Yeah, now it's all just like tail codes, which is boring. I want to get, especially the stuff that they actually do, like pulling over planes or whatever. I like that you should, have Arizona Air Guard or like Texas Air Guard or whatever on the side, just to like really enhance the sort of like air policing mission.
What's going on with this plane back here? It seems to have had its back blown out.
Zaddy.
Yeah.
Too much tail flexing.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah, it had a little bit of tail flutter. Don't worry about it.
Still managed to get it on the ground somehow.
Listen,
the Arizona Air National Guard is just that good, Justin. That's why they had Barry Goldwater.
Yeah.
No one's left one up there yet. So,
well, that's what they were trying to do with the dinosaur. So even the Air National Guard, they get rid of them 75, and that's the podcast. Thanks for watching. Made it a quick one this time. Thank you for subscribing to the Patreon.
Wow.
Wait, there's more. Next slide, please.
So this is one of my favorite genres of copywriting. This is like, so you need to like do some Don Draper magazine marketing shit for your fighter jet. And there's a ton of these because they used to do it in like trade publications, as if Air Force officers were sitting around reading, Fighter Jet Monthly, which I guess they were because,
All right, here's what we do. We call it a missile with a man in it.
And they did. That's the marketing pitch for this. It's so fast. It's like a missile with a dude. And the US Air Force, they like it. They didn't like it. Doesn't matter. Not important. Because you're trying to sell this to foreign air forces. You're trying to make back some of your losses on not, having the Air Force buy 700 of them. And so Lockheed goes to everyone who could conceivably want an Air Force and goes, would you like to buy the missile with a man in it?
And lucky for them, right about this time, well, that's because you're sensible and it's not the Cold War.
Yeah, dumbass.
Yeah.
Right about this time, NATO, the smaller NATO nation, there was like I think a NATO-wide tender trying to find like a light fighter bomber.
Does it come with the man? Do I own the man as well?
No, you got to put your own
man in
there.
You want a missile with a man in it? Why? Because you want to be around blokes.
I think I don't want to own a man. I feel like that's
don't do that.
We sort of established that was a bad thing back in the 1860s.
Look, we thought we established already. You guys aren't canceling the podcast yet. Liam has episodes for that.
Yeah.
If you are an Air Force, right, you got a couple of options. You can buy a MiG-21 if you want to like get Sovietized. You can buy a Dassault Mirage if you want to get Frenchified. You can buy this, or you can design your own thing. And those are the options that await you. And a lot of people go for this. Lockheed has this deal of the century, right? Which is a bunch of air forces are going to buy this, and this is going to be like the staple. This is going to be the thing that's going to be the backbone of a bunch of like Western allies.
I like Deal of the Century because it kind of has a dual meaning. Because Deal of the Century, that it's a really good, I think technically, it would be incorrect if the F-4 Phantom still had its original designation, which was the F-110 Spectre. Originally was a Century series before they redesignated
way
it.
Cooler name.
I know. I'm so pissed. Blame the Tri-Service Designation System.
Ugh. But yeah, this is very successful for Lockheed. Next slide, please.
I like this third advertisement here. Look at all these countries that are using the F-104.
Yeah, look at these
United
beautiful
States,
roundels.
Canada, Nazi, red circle, whatever this is. I don't know.
Of Japan.
For one, I thought that last one. I know that last one's the Netherlands, but for one, I thought it was Czechoslovakia, and I was like, "That ain't right."
I guess it's just
Czechoslovakia
the
They're
orange.
practically giving them away.
Really off the reservation there. Just like, the funniest thing you could do is, I think, is sell them to Yugoslavia. Just like, yeah.
I mean, we sold a lot of jets to Yugoslavia. They were flying F-86 Sabres for a while, and they were driving around in M47 Patton tanks.
I love alignment,
Eisenhower sold them a bunch of stuff because we were afraid that the Russians would go through them to get to like Italy, and since Tito wasn't on good terms, it was one of those countries, much like pre-anarchy Somalia and a couple others, we were like, yeah, they're communists, but there are communists, damn it.
The enemy of my enemy has a sick ass fighter jet.
Yes.
Give us some cars, we'll give you our jets.
Fair trade.
Next slide, please. So this is the option for if you want to get Frenchified, if you want to have a glass of wine for breakfast with your baguette. And this is the main competitor to the F-104. This is the Dassault Mirage. And what's up?
Oh, nothing. I didn't say anything.
Okay.
I thought
sometimes feel like I'm lecturing here, but it's like like as much about this stuff, if not more than me. So
it looks like you could throw this thing at a wall and like score a bunch of points.
Yeah,
sort of like
made paper planes that look like this.
Yeah,
I'm a big Mirage fan. I like the Mirage series.
It's aged well because they're still making them. Is the other thing. This is one of the things they like. Instead of doing a new design every couple of years, they just like make Mirage 2, Mirage 3, and Mirage 4.
The new 2023 Mirage.
Exactly, yeah.
Now with backup camera.
Yeah, that's the Mitsubishi approach. We'll implement it when we have to. Shut up.
That's right. So this is what France, obviously, Australia, Israel, Switzerland, South Africa, and most of South America went with.
What a collection of nation states.
Yeah.
It's one of those jets that get sold to people who end up shooting at each other because the French just did not give a fuck.
There's a ton of like Mirage on Mirage combat because the French show up.
On our own. We need jets for everyone.
It's fully like I'm playing both sides, so I always come out on top.
Except for all the times I don't. I will nuke someone as a warning.
Yeah. Pakistan still uses these, albeit
the
a
Mirage
modernized
3,
version. Also would have been, because Argentina bought a bunch of them, and this would have been a serious problem for us, the Brits in the Falklands, if they had had more than 5 minutes of flying time or the ability to refuel in the air. Because, again, interceptors.
Is that like an exaggeration, or is that how much time they could stay in the air?
It's like half an hour.
Half an hour.
5 minutes.
That's not that great. Yeah,
That's not very good.
especially
No,
to
that's
like
not
get
great.
from Argentina to the Falklands, which are in the middle of fucking nowhere. And yeah, should have bought an aircraft carrier.
I'm always
This
saying
is-
this.
Well, they did, but
Oh yeah, that one thing.
Oops.
So as you can see from the big sort of beefy Delta Wing, this is much more maneuverable. It's a much better dogfighter than the Starfighter, but it's also more expensive. And that lack of range really tells if you're not Israel. Because if you're
Yeah.
Israeli, you're fighting over your own tiny country, which is
you're the size of New Jersey. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
literally like 20 minutes flying time max.
yeah,
to
no,
get
and
top to bottom.
they loved these things. They kept them in service for a good long while because initially, before we basically became Uncle Sugar, most of their planes they bought were French.
Yeah. Well, I mean, France also gave them all of the nuclear stuff too. Incidentally, my question: why the fuck did Australia buy these? Given that we've established this is
Can
useful
you
for
rotate
small
this image
countries.
180 degrees to better accurately describe how the Australian Air Force buys these?
Yeah, we'll buy the plane that looks like a big cock, mate.
You just have to imagine that the Australians knew in their heart of hearts that they were only buying these to keep the defense budget up and they were never going to use them for anything, because otherwise you should fly one of these over the outback and you run out of fuel. Just like, well,
also think
I'm
for
in
a while-
Looking at Papua New Guinea side-eyed.
Well, for the longest time, they were also buying a lot of stuff. Mostly, like most Commonwealth countries, just bought exclusively for Britain. And then I think one day they woke up and were like, "This stuff's kind of shit, isn't it, mate?"
Listen, the English Electric Lightning was good.
Australia, a country that is spiritually British, buying Mirage fighter jets and Leopard 1 tanks.
The good news is the Outback is much like the film Plane with Gerard Butler in that
Those
it's very
are
flat. So you can land anywhere because it's very flat. It's just then you get out of the plane, you get kicked to death by a kangaroo.
Yeah.
Got a great idea for a film, mate. Just gonna cook and call it Plane. Guess what it's about?
So, yeah, you got to have one of those survival rifles to kill kangaroos with. So for the rest of the sort of second act of this this episode, we've gone through by country all of the countries that Lockheed sold this to, and gone, how'd they do with it? And so first up, on
Nazis.
We got to talk about some sinister-looking men. This is a picture of, or two pictures of two Nazis. On the left we have Johannes Steinhoff. On the right we have Franz Josef Strauss. Yeah.
Where did he get these medals from?
Funny you should ask that because Bundeswehr officers, Bundeswehr being the modern the post World War II West German, eventually German military. World War II veterans could wear their World War II decorations. They were specifically removed of all Nazi symbology, but they could still fucking wear them. So it's great because you could have like a Bundeswehr here officer talking to some army lieutenant colonel in the 60s who he was literally hosing down his squad mates at Normandy and be wearing the fucking ribbon for it.
It's alignment again. It's bedfellows. Yeah. The biggest detail of that you can see is if you look over Steinhoff's left pocket here. Normally, in like an Air Force, you would have the wings, and then you have them, around an emblem, right? The emblem that was on that's gone, and so now you just have this weird sort of like dual wing structure thing that's still current
to the
today.
Emblem? Tell us what happened to the emblem.
Yeah, not going to interrogate that any further. It's funny, you see some like restored like World War II German aircraft by private collectors, and some of them, the ones that are in Germany, I don't think they could have the swastika on it, but what they do is they'll just like paint over certain parts of it, so it comes out as this weird sort of like hodgepodge half swastika. It's really fucking funny.
You got to put on the two X's like from The Great Dictator, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Or just like the mustache from the Tintin bad guys.
Yeah.
I think the like still like bare wing thing is still current in like the Luftwaffe as well. So let's talk about Franz Josef Strauss first because he's actually worse. He's like the worst person on this slide. So
Does this man look anything more like a CSU politician?
Yeah, very Bavarian man.
Yes.
So he had been an army officer, a platoon commander on the Eastern Front. He got frostbite, but not badly enough, and so survived. And survived. Like he got his frostbite early enough to get like evacuated back to Nazi Germany and out of the war. I know. And he is your prototypical like West German crypto fascist. Whenever you see any of the sort of like East German propaganda that's like all of these guys are just Nazis with the serial numbers filed off, this is who they're talking about.
What does CSU stand for?
Christian Social Union.
It's like the Bavarian affiliate of the broader CDU party in Germany.
Yeah, and it's sort of the like one-party government Catholic theocracy of Bavaria for a long time. Like Strauss was a big maker of the CSU, and one of his sort of dicta was there must never be a legitimate political party to the right of the CSU. They always have to be the furthest right party in German politics.
Well, they fucked up on that one.
Yeah, I know, really letting the side down these days. So he was defense minister of West Germany. In between writing about his admiration for SS men, he has the editor of Der Spiegel arrested at one point, which causes a sort of constitutional crisis as to whether or not you have freedom of speech in West Germany or not. And in amongst all of this, Lockheed Martin shows up with a suitcase full of cash and goes, "Would you like $10 million to adopt the F-104?" And he says, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Incidentally,
that's only a slight exaggeration.
Yeah, no, I mean, we are talking cash transactions here. He got paid $10 million to adopt a sort of heavily modified for German use F-104. He's also one of the founders of Airbus, which should be the real critique.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that sounds about right. Yeah,
I mean, who involved in founding Airbus wasn't a fascist at some point in the 40s? You're talking about Italians, French, and Germans.
Yeah, you know how Boeing fans are like, "I'm not flying on an Airbus because like die by wire or whatever." That's not a good critique of Airbus. This is a good critique of Airbus. It's like,
you would think if it was. You would think if it was founded by fascists, it would have a more stylish name than Airbus.
I've never gotten that name.
It's like it's a bus in the air.
It conveys like reliability, boredom, simpleness, things of this nature.
I don't know. It's just. Do you really want to convey bus? The bus in the air.
You don't hear about a lot of people dying in bus crashes, You
have like 3 or 4 countries with these languages with so much nuance and stuff in them, and now we're gonna call it Airbus. We're gonna call it someone like named Carl in like Minnesota would have named it. We're gonna call it Airbus.
Other Franz Josef Strauss story. He said Germans had a right not to hear about Auschwitz anymore.
No, you fucking don't.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Now we're telling you about that.
20 years later, Munich Airport is named after him.
I bet it is.
I've been there.
We should have fucking Morgenthau planned Germany. I used to say this as a joke, and now I'm just like, no, we should have fucking cut Germany up into 3 or 4 different countries. It doesn't deserve to exist as one cohesive nation state anymore.
Yeah, but the problem is, if you'd done that, one of them would have been Bavaria, and this guy would have been God Emperor of it.
Yeah, well, then we could have just treated it like North Korea, and it would have been fine and justified.
Do the words extrajudicial killings mean anything to you? That's why the good Lord invented Mossad. Learn more on our Israel bonus episode.
We're not going to talk about the Nazi war criminals that Mossad employed, because that's a whole other.
No, there's a Lions episode for that.
Go listen to it. It's a good one.
It is a good one, actually.
So that's Franz Josef Strauss. On the other hand, we have Johannes Steinhoff. Steinhoff, he had been an ace in the Luftwaffe in both Bf-109s and the Me-262. He was one of the guys that Chuck Yeager was shooting down.
Exactly.
And this is how he got this way, right? Like he got his face burned off in an Me-262 crash, but not enough.
So Strauss got frostbite, but not enough. This
Yep.
guy got burned enough. Ian Smith crashes in his fucking Hawker Hunter, but not enough. None of these guys can fucking die enough. There is no justice. There is no honor.
Now, I want to stake out the point here, first of all, that having a facial disfigurement does not make you a bad person. Having a facial disfigurement that you got in service of Adolf Hitler, on the other hand, does make you a bad
You a
person.
bad person,
And that's
yeah,
the sort of
100%.
like starting point for this. So Steinhoff...
That's when you get it used against you by James Bond.
Yeah. Steinhoff had always been kind of like aloofly contemptuous of both Goering and Hitler because he was a pilot and pilots are just like this. But that sort of like aloofness got interpreted as anti-Nazi enough that he was very quickly hired back on to make West Germany, have an air force again. To be an acceptable face, so to speak, of the new Luftwaffe. And if you go to the next slide, he's kind of this weird spectral presence in like every 50s and 60s photo of NATO top brass, where it's just like, yeah, there's a couple of guys in suits. No, it's the guy with the Nazi skull face. Pretty certain we're the good guys.
Yeah.
Is that a priest back there? Is the collar? Like, what is going on in this
Yeah,
photo?
that's a good point. Man.
What is happening here? Is this an Illuminati meeting?
No, there is. Listen, ask yourself: is there something sinister about NATO? And then look at this photo and reflect. No, everything is fine.
Everything's fine.
This is fine. This is fine.
Just having a nice cocktail party. Next slide, please.
Oh yeah, this one I threw in just because this is another
Cool.
sort of what might have happened, and also it's cool because I do a lot of like alt history, art, and writing stuff. I spend a lot of time on this extremely boomer forum looking up secret projects or like proposed things that never got adopted. And Germany, after the war, they tried several times to make their own fighter aircraft, and they ended up in the end mostly either just buying ones from us, the US, or building ones with other Europeans. But this was one of the things that went up against the F-104. It's the Heinkel HE-31 Floret, which I think is some kind of sword, like a saber.
Huh.
And I love it because it's like a West German MiG-21 with a bit of F-5 freedom fighter in it.
Big pointy intake on the front.
And it's like they designed this in like the late 50s, and this was their idea, like, well, we can make a domestic one. This is the last time Heinkel would try to make a fighter aircraft.
I'm torn, right? Because on the one hand, I'm like, this looks pretty good. On the other, I'm like, yeah, this is what air superiority fighters looked like in the 60s if the Nazis won the war. Like,
I threw this in the I'm sure like at least half of the listeners will be familiar with the New Order mod for Hearts of Iron 4, which is basically Cold War with the Nazis and Japanese and whatever if they'd won. And I actually threw this to their Discord being like, hey, this would be better than whatever you have in the tech tree for the 60s for a German fighter. And I never got a reply. And then I checked the game after the mod after the most recent hotfix. And guess what they have in the 60s slot for German fighters now?
Uncredited developer.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Whatever. I'm happy where they went with it. But I don't feel too bad for Heinkel because they ended up license building the F-104 for Lockheed in West Germany. And they would also end up being absorbed into Airbus.
Yeah, it's cool how if you look up the constituent parts of Airbus, it's like, the Herr Nazi, Nazi airplane factory, defunct in 1946, absorbed into Airbus 1960.
A lot of these companies, and then you look at like Heinkel and Messerschmitt, they both kept trying to make fighters up until the 60s, and they just eventually kind of gave up or license produce stuff.
Yeah, they tried to sell them to like Spain and stuff. And then like the Arab countries.
William Messerschmitt tried to make jets for Spain and then Egypt. Kurt Tank went to Argentina and then India.
Imagine a Nazi going to Argentina.
Yeah, I know. The Horton
imagine
brothers
a Nazi going to Egypt. All of this.
Imagine a Nazi going to India.
You go where the budget is, and...
I just threw that in because it was cool looking.
I like when Airbus makes military aircraft because it implies the existence of a fighter bus and a
fighter bus
and like a
fighter bus,
a bomber bus, a sort of a reconnaissance bus. You know, some kind of I
It's
don't know.
still for some reason an A321.
Yeah, they just
a
put a missile
cargo
on
bus, which is just a truck.
it.
I think there are mods for Grand Theft Auto for all of this.
Oh yeah. I put in a slide here of the West German experience with the F-104. And first of all, just look at this thing. Look how much shit it's got hanging off of it compared to the nice, beautiful, sleek lines that we saw earlier.
That's probably fine.
Yeah, it's probably fine.
It's very bloated, which same. Because nobody wants a pure interceptor anymore. The doctrine is like shifted back around, and so unlike the US, the Luftwaffe, which has no money, can't keep this inventory of like different fighters. It has to have one thing that does everything. There's a great German phrase I'm going to teach you for this that's far more evocative than jack of all trades. It has to be an eierlegende Wollmilchsau. It has to be
Sorry, what was that about war crimes?
it has to be a woolly, egg-laying, milk-giving pig. It has to do.
I'm
So
gonna
you've
start
made a
saying that.
platypus.
Yeah, that's the most German thing I've ever heard in my life in translation.
I'm gonna start
Eierlegende
using that.
Wollmilchsau.
Yeah.
Even before you put any of this shit on there,
I'm feeling strangely aroused. Why is that?
Found your persona, Liam.
yeah.
Nope. That is too much money, man. I spend too much money on too many things.
So if even without any of this shit on there, this is already a third again as heavy as the original Starfighter. And now they want to do other shit with it. They want to do bombing with it, which means you have to put bombs on it, and bombs are heavy. They want to do long range shit with it, and that means you've got to put fuel tanks on it, and fuel tanks are heavy. And the other thing is East German airspace is terrifying. The Russians, the Soviets, very, very good at making surface-to-air missiles. Pretty good at making like mobile gun systems for shooting down aircraft. It's still pretty good at both of those things today, even.
Yeah,
And
that's
so-
what the
things they're
F-117
decent
hates
at
shit.
still.
Yeah. And so because this is the front line against the most probable enemy, the social fascists of West Germany, East German airspace is incredibly heavily defended. And so the Luftwaffe comes to the conclusion that you don't fly at more than like 250 feet of altitude. That's a suicide mission. And that has like a 90% fatality rate, we imagine.
Jesus Christ.
We
The option is not suicide.
Yeah. And so the decision is, well, fine, we just fly low. We fly at like 50 feet. Like maximum. Absolute like treetop level flying. And so in order to do that, you have to train the same way. And so it's not at all uncommon that you're around like an airbase in West Germany. You just like you're driving along the road or whatever. One of these comes over like and sort of fucking grazes the top of your car at Mach 2. Because that's what they expect to have to do in World War III is breathtakingly low altitude, high speed flying.
It's
which
just
is
fucking like barnstorming.
yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
fly the plane through someone's barn, and then
Yeah,
the
it's
plane
bomb storming.
explodes because it's gone too fast.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is extremely dangerous with any plane, but like doubly so with a plane that's like this, and triply so with a plane like this that's like out of spec, as it were.
Yeah, I feel like this strategy is actually a lot more dangerous than they think it is.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Well,
'Cause there's
the
other
other thing is
factors
the
that are
along
suicide
the Earth's
mission.
dick is not what I would choose to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there can be so many things with the Cold War where they come up with this idea. It's like, well, this is probably a little dangerous, but how dangerous could it really be? And the
Very,
answer
as
is
it turns
always
out.
so much more dangerous.
You know what? There's a lot of things in Europe are 6-story buildings, which are 60 feet high usually.
Unusually tall pine trees, hills.
Pine tree, maybe a small hill. I don't know, maybe a radio tower or like maybe a kid is flying a kite and it gets sucked in the engine and it blows up.
a slightly too high VW van bus.
Mhm.
Just shears the top off of a regular land bus.
Some kind of like tied arch bridge, you know. I mean, there's a lot of things you're gonna run into at 50 feet altitude.
Germany has terrain. Like, as much as we talk about the Fulda Gap, it's got topography.
I'm sure the plane is talking to you about it constantly. Terrain.
Nine.
Terrain.
I will not pull up.
This might even be pre GPWS. It may not.
Yeah, I think this is pre Bitch and Betty.
Yeah. Next slide, please. I got a really fun detail about this, which is
this is great.
So they painted this up in a unique livery for this, which I really like. So the Luftwaffe also went to Lockheed and they're like, we want a rocket-assisted takeoff version of this because it's only been 20 years since we've killed all of our best pilots with rocket aircraft, and old habits die really fucking hard.
We're ready to do it again.
None of our planes turn our pilots into superhomogenate. You have given us a raw deal. Put a rocket on it.
Yeah, for old time's sake, we need to melt a couple of them. The deal with this is, this launches from a standing start. This fires out of the hangar. You keep this in a hardened shelter, and then you just light up this big fucking rocket, incinerate any of the ground crew
cartoon.
who aren't fast enough runners.
But you know what? You know what's crazy? This is the stupidest idea like this they thought of. Before they settled on this, this was another thing where they had German companies looking at building something of their own. They had like Focke-Wulf and Messerschmitt looking at planes that launched vertically like fucking rockets. Like, they were looking at all sorts of ridiculous shit like this. This was the least ridiculous thing they ended up with.
We may have lost the war and gotten owned. However, maybe this was not such a bad idea. They did
just like like East German Air Command. You're watching all this shit happen. Like, god damn, those guys are morons. Anyway, put in some more air defense, which is, you know, we're not even ever gonna have to use it, but we can keep making them do stupid shit because we have it.
These guys are such dumb cops. We need to build a wall to keep them out.
It's such an unforced error.
That's the other issue. You're flying at 50 feet, you ram straight into the Iron
wall.
Curtain.
Yeah. It's like a big barbed wire imprint. So they did 8 test launches of this before they were finally persuaded by Lockheed. This is a terrible fucking idea. Do not ever do this.
When the guy tried to sell you the arms, is like, guys, this is a terrible fucking idea. Maybe you should take that as an indicator of something.
If you guys tried a runway, it's just made of asphalt. You know, it's real cheap.
If you want to feel even more anxious about this was going to carry nuclear weapons.
Oh yeah, this had because while Germany didn't have nuclear weapons, it was one of the countries that basically had the responsibility if a nuclear war started to carry U.S. nuclear weapons, and this fucking thing was the thing that was going to carry it for most of the Cold War for Germany.
Oh, boy,
like 50 feet, and it whacks into like, I don't know,
a pole of some kind.
Yeah, like
Children's
a maypole.
Hospital.
Yeah, Children's Hospital. Yeah,
not even a tall one, just a normal one.
Yeah, it was like a normal one. Yeah.
Okay, this one, Devin, you might have to take this one out. Like,
could easily hit like a some kind of a steeple on a church though. Like not even a big church, like one in a village.
Any of the like leftover Nazi paraphernalia, you know.
Yeah.
But so next slide, please. This is deadly as fuck. Is the other thing about this. For the reasons that we've enumerated, this kills a lot of pilots. And it gets nicknamed the Witwenmacher, the Widowmaker, the Fliegende Sarg, the Flying Coffin.
Oh no, not a bunch of ex-Nazis.
I know.
Way to finish the job, U.S. Air Force.
Weirdly, these are like too young to be ex-Nazis, or at most like ex-Hitler youth.
They got the taint on them. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, that's true. But this is like the Nazis. The Nazis are the guys who are like organizing all of this, and then they're like killing their own children.
Yeah.
This is not a joke, by the way.
But yeah, no, this is not a joke.
This is not an exaggeration. I'm pretty certain either Strauss or one of the others his son was a like naval aviator who flew one of these and got killed in it.
Yeah, 'cause they lost so many. They West Germany bought 916 of these between 1960 and 1973, and by the time they phased it out in 1987, they had lost 292 of them. They killed 115 pilots, which included actually a few American instructors, but most of them were
One in
Germans.
three of these planes that they bought crashed.
32% of the overall fleet over 31 years in service.
Yeah, if I'm like East German air defense, I'm like, maybe we can decommission some of these anti-aircraft positions.
Guys, they keep
I don't
doing
think-
it to themselves.
I don't think they're gonna make.
bored.
I don't think they're gonna make it over here.
I'm in the East German People's Air Force. I'm doing fucking sick donuts in my slick ass MiG-29. I'm just looking over the like line of demarcation every so often, seeing a guy controlled flight into terrain. Just like, wow.
The MiG-29s, which were so nice that after unification, even though
They kept them. Yeah.
they kept it. Unified Germany sold off a bunch of Soviet stuff, but they kept the MiG-29s because they thought they were sick.
You can see photos of them in like modern like low-vis Luftwaffe like.
Oh, they look
liveries.
so fucking good.
Right. Yeah.
But they would actually pay out some money to some of the widows and dependents of about like 32 of the pilots that were killed by this. They never admitted liability, but they did some payoff.
Wait, hold
They
on. I have
paid-
to look something up real quick.
Okay.
No, it's fine. Go ahead. I'm just
So
typing.
Lockheed paid these like 60 widows and dependents 3 million Deutschmarks, which at the time in 1975 was
Like $8?
1.2 million US, 1.2 million US dollars in 1975. So like, it's a fair amount of Xboxing.
Wurden Sie bei einem unverschuldeten Unfall verletzt?
Shut
Have
up.
you been injured in an accident that wasn't your fault?
No, the sign in West Germany is just that legal sign. It's like, are injured? Good. That's the sign in East Germany facing
Yeah, they put up a
West
sign
Germany.
over
They're
the
gonna
wall that's like, verletzt? Gut. Good so.
They're gonna stop the Soviets at the Fulda Gap by just crashing F-104s.
Yeah, they're gonna
Until there's a
9/11
giant
the
pile
Soviet
there.
tank army. Yeah,
You know what's funny? One of the explanations of the German, one of the things that there was obviously a lot of outrage and controversy about this, and one of the things in the German press was that basically that their argument was our guys are too dumb for this. You bought too sophisticated a plane, and our
wow.
sweet young himbo pilots can't figure out how to fly
wow.
it. Even though this thing originally was designed to be something like a dumb, stupid muscle car fighter, the Germans are going, "Das ist too complicated for my precious Johann."
That's why your precious Johann has been turned into mulch.
That's right. That's why he's currently like embedded in the center
Whatever
of
the
Halo
German
and,
equivalent of marinara sauce is, he is now it.
Yeah,
Schnitzel.
he
I don't
Oh god,
crashed
Germans have to make the
into a-
worst marinara sauce.
I had some very nice bolognese sauce in Switzerland once, actually.
Ooh,
Oh yeah,
I
that's
love a
why.
good bolognese.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, Roz, you are aware that Switzerland and Germany are different countries, right? Or are you just going full on Anschluss?
No, they're just German Italians.
He's
So
just
Ross
going.
is going to complete the Anschluss,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
for
Ross is
Greater
going to
Poland.
Ross is going to enact the German plan, which I shit you not was called Operation Christmas Tree.
Yeah,
I hate
Unternehmen
these fucking
Tannenbaum.
Fucking hate Nazis, man.
Next slide, please. We're gonna talk about what was wrong with this some more.
Yeah, this is what I call what's actually wrong with it. Part 2, oh scheisse. So we still have
Ach, nein.
we still have all the technical problems that we mentioned earlier, but now we have even more problems, both technical and otherwise. So, as we've already alluded to, the F-104 was being shoved into a role by Germany and other countries, as we'll see shortly, that it wasn't designed for. You're trying to make a high-altitude fighter interceptor be a low-altitude fighter bomber, and more importantly, you're tacking on a bunch of new shit to the plane to try and make that work. Some of the modifications they did for the F-104G, which is the variant that most of these countries are about to talk about, used, they put a whole bunch of new avionics in it, a lot of which they were distracting to the pilot, but also added more weight onto the plane. Also, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Not a lot of people know this, but weather in Northern Europe is kind of different to the weather in a lot of parts of the U.S., particularly where F-104 pilots was trained, which was Arizona,
Sorry,
which is
I'm
very
back.
flat
Planned
and very
Parenthood
dry.
called me.
And you don't have a lot of VW buses driving around, so you can do that low, fast flying. Can't really do that in West Germany, where it's hilly and rainy and wet and just gray. It didn't work out super well.
Yeah, surname notwithstanding, there's a reason Chuck Yeager wasn't from Germany.
Yeah. Also, the reconstituted Luftwaffe was still very new at the time the F-104 was being introduced into service, and they just weren't ready for it. The first generation, like I said, not all of them were Luftwaffe veterans, though a fair amount of them were. But of those who were brought back into service, they'd been in civilian jobs for fucking years, and then they were being taught how to fly jets. Like, imagine you're a guy who like flew BF-109s for like 1 year at the end of the war. You've been like working as an accountant for 15 years, and then one day they knock on your door and say you're back in the Air Force.
I said no.
Well, also, for ground stuff and stuff, I seem to remember that the Luftwaffe had like an abnormally short draft as like a hedge against militarism, where it was like you're there for like a year, basically.
Yeah, like maybe like 18 months. Like the draft, I think, would vary, like depending on the politics of the time. But like that didn't help. They had a very high turnover of conscripts, so that didn't help either. But like the pilots, they had to like for each of the first generation to fly in like for F-86s and stuff, like slower first generation jets as training wheels. But more importantly, like even then, like I saw one. It was a British Royal Navy pilot, actually. I forgot his name, who described the F-104.
Eric Brown.
Yeah, Eric Brown. He described it as a hot ship, and what he means by that is it's just a plane you have to be flying every second you're in it. You can't sleep on it. You have to be in the zone all the time, or it will kill you.
Yeah, the car that tries to kill you.
Yeah,
it wants to devour your
Viper.
soul,
First
and
Gen Viper, yeah.
and you have to actively be denying it your soul. So basically, it was not meant for a rookie pilot. The U.S. Air Force wouldn't allow someone in this plane unless they had 1,500 hours of flight time. You want to know
On
how much
jets,
flight time?
presumably.
Yeah, on jets. You want to know how much flight time the Luftwaffe pilot had on average before they got in this thing? 400.
Great. Perfect. You do like 1 week seminar, you watch a DVD, get a firm slap on the ass, and you're into the thing.
Exactly. And most of the
And you get
accidents
to
were...
hang out with the missile with a man in it.
Yeah.
You get to be the man in the missile. I'm looking. The famous Michael Jackson song. I'm looking at the man in the missile.
Who Roz wants to own, which is we don't have time to unpack all of that.
Oh, I don't want to own the man. I said it was a bad idea to own men.
Well, we're doing some more revisionism.
You own the missile and you lease the missile to the man.
Yeah.
Like,
well, no, I pay the man to fly the missile.
That Patreon money looking real good.
Yeah.
Oh, now we're paying him. I see. We're doing the Patriot thing. I don't have slaves. I pay all my farm workers.
Small business tyrants.
But most of the accidents of this thing were what they would call controlled flight into terrain, which is a fancy word for they fucking crashed because they fucked up.
Yeah, ain't shit wrong with the airplane. Plane's fine.
Yep. It got so bad that
maybe they shouldn't have had it flying 50 feet over the surface.
Yeah, like it got so bad that Steinhoff, the burned man Nazi we saw earlier, it got too much for him, and he grounded the entire fleet in the 60s. Like
Dr. Buzzkill Nazi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
well, this is the thing. This is like the thing that sort of professionalizes the Luftwaffe kicking and screaming is Steinhoff and another Nazi ace, Erich Hartmann. They sort of like seize control over the fighter establishment, over the objections of Strauss and other bureaucrats, and go, first of all, you need to actually train on how to fly this thing. Second of all, we need to think about how we're going to use the thing. And third of all, you need to stop taking suitcases full of cash to just do whatever the Americans want.
That's when the fighter pilots go, why do you want to be trading? Do you want to be around a bunch of men?
That's a bunch of dudes. And this sort of leads us to the modern Luftwaffe that we know and love today.
Yeah.
All I'm saying, this is making me reconsider a lot of my thoughts about the Iron Curtain and the Berlin Wall, which is if I'm in East Germany and I'm in charge of anything, I want to prevent any of my citizens from going to West Germany. and randomly being hit by one of these planes.
This is here to protect you.
We're gunning you down on the Berlin Wall for your own
Yeah,
safety.
it's
Yeah,
for
we're
your
going
humane
down.
If
death.
you go over there, you know what's going to happen to you.
And I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't throw in the East Germans. When they formed the NVA, the National Volksarmy, they absolutely had that riddled with former Nazi officers too.
Oh, yeah,
but
of course.
but they had they were wearing the right uniforms, so it was fine.
Once again, it's a case of our good Nazis versus their bad Nazis.
Yes,
Yeah.
literally.
It's like
Yes.
it's the line from The Right Stuff, a film that is closely tied to all of this, where I think it's like, no, Mr. President, our Germans are better than their Germans.
I mean, one does sympathize to the extent that if you decided that you needed an army in Germany, you could not staff it but with former Nazis at that point.
Yeah.
However, let's just say that, at least the East German ones had to pretend to feel bad about it. Whereas some of the West German ones were fully just like, you know what, we didn't do shit wrong, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, make an entire rest of my career saying that over and over.
Yeah, actually, it was sick, and I'm going to wear these medals on my chest to remind you about it. But
Yeah.
by the time this was out of service, they had to modify a bunch of them to carry black boxes, something that at the time a fighter jet did not typically had, because it was so almost guaranteed it would fail. They needed to know how. But the Germans, being one of the most prominent user here, and the most prominent sort of, one having it crash a lot, they're not the only ones, because we have a rogues gallery here,
Yeah,
which you will
rapid
start on.
fire.
Next slide.
The lightning round. Canada, eh?
Hey,
I think this plane looks great, by the way.
Looks pretty good.
This actually does look pretty good. This is before they adopted the modern flag, too, right?
Yeah, this is back when they still had the red ensign. I like the roundel, though.
Yeah, the roundel's really good. Yeah.
So the RCAF, it might not even have been the RCAF. It may still have been the CAF at this point. They have the same problem as the Germans. They want to use it for like ground attack. They also want to use it to carry nuclear weapons because, they committed to the same thing Germany did, which is if shit gets real, the US will give us nuclear weapons and we will then have to use them or whatever. And they backed out of that pretty quickly.
They still want to fly it at 50 feet. That might work pretty good in some parts of like Manitoba and
oh boy,
Alberta.
It's flat. Oh boy.
Yeah, but just booming and zooming over like just over Saskatchewan or something.
Yeah, exactly. You fly over a grain elevator and it explodes.
You don't need to fly over a grain elevator to
just
make it
listening
explode.
to the air and get worms at 790 miles an hour.
Yeah,
they
you're not
literally
flying
did
over
though,
it. It's
because
a wooden grain elevator, and you fly next to it, and it explodes.
they
Those
weren't
Obviously,
flying
grain
catch on
elevator is like
fire.
70 or 80 feet tall.
They weren't flying these in Canada. They forward deployed, because this is how serious Canada was about this NATO shit in the 50s. They forward deployed 6 fighter squadrons to West Germany, like Canadian bases in West Germany. And they were going to use them there.
Definitely putting up a Berlin Wall and an Iron Curtain. Not only the Germans, but the Canadians are going to crash their planes into you. My God.
The Canadians may force you to watch This Hour Has 22 Minutes.
Yeah.
They may, make you drink Molson. So the Canadians...
Like blow.
Yeah. Also, this is another aspect of this, is that a ton of aircraft manufacturers that didn't really still have a reason to exist were getting propped up by building this on license from Lockheed, because Lockheed didn't have the capacity to build all of this shit. So instead, they would just send you the plans, and then Focke-Wulf, or in this case, Canadair, would build this under license. And so Canadair's version is the F-104, which, guess what, adds a bunch more shit, because of course it does.
Even more. Even more. Yeah, they add in like air to ground specific attack equipment, but also the options for the recon pod with cameras, just all sorts of more shit they tack on. And this is onto the F-104G that already had shit tacked onto it.
Can it pass the moose test?
How tall is a moose?
About 12 feet.
I don't want to see an 80-foot tall moose. You know.
Moose height.
No, I'm thinking like if you land and you hit a
Oh,
moose
no,
on a
only
runway.
about-
Oh, okay.
Get a
I
moose
put
height.
money on the moose.
What about
the
if you
moose
stack
might
a moose
win,
on top
yeah.
of another moose?
Largest ever recorded Alaskan moose was 7.7.
Okay, so you got to stack like 10 meese.
That's
on
at the
top of
shoulder,
each
though.
other.
Yeah, they're big motherfuckers.
I think the problem is the moose is going to take out the landing gear.
Oh, yeah,
that's true,
and not really blink about it.
Well,
Yeah,
this
you
thing
don't.
is such horrible luck. I wouldn't be surprised if a moose caused one of them to crash.
Yeah.
You remember when Roz, I told you as we were driving on the what highway was it?
It was the Heritage Run in
The
Newfoundland.
Heritage Run. Yeah, and I told you that if we hit a moose, we were just as dead at 150 with speed redacted as we were at 60, and you said that was fine.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a pretty funny way to be killed, to be honest.
No, EMS was not coming for us out there,
Yeah.
buddy.
So you can get into some statistical fuckery with Canada because this kills 37 Canadians, right? There's 110 accidents. It's a pretty good survivability rate, actually. But as the F-104 still has defenders, and those defenders will say to you, that's not as bad as the F-86 Sabre that this thing was replacing, which is true on the numbers. And this is, it's actually true of a lot of these. Like, I think Germany might even have had like a higher loss rate with Sabres. However, if you look at the actual numbers of how many of these they bought, you just go, you flew half of these into a hill.
Yeah, they have the single worst loss rate percentage out of any F-104 operator. They bought 238 of these. They lose 46% of them over 25 years.
Jesus Christ.
110 out of 238. The single worst percentage.
Yeah, 50 feet over the ground doesn't work great when you're flying into Banff.
just crash landing in Banff right into Instagram influencers. Get off your phone.
I would look if that was what it primarily crashed into. I would say bring it back. But I mean,
this thing sliding on its belly up a ski slope.
No one cares about your story, I say, as I drop in Mark 17 on some Pearl girl's face.
We're doing reels now.
It's funny. I was just talking earlier about sort of you see weird sort of passive aggressive things in Wikipedia articles putting things by that thing's defender. One weird thing in the Canadian, like the CF-104 article, is they're very clear. No one ever called it the Widowmaker, like the German did, that was invented by the press. What it was called, though, by the Canadians was the aluminum death tube.
They know how to name them, man.
The lawn dart and the flying phallus.
Incredible.
Yes, the air cock.
But not just Canadian. So sorry, go ahead, Alice.
No, I was just going to the next slide too, which is Canada sells some of these that they make onto, next slide, Norway and Denmark.
Oh my God.
Swedes, because we have Saab.
Denmark, you can probably fly 50 feet over the ground, no problem. Norway, on the other hand.
Well, they actually both do well with these, oddly enough, relatively speaking.
Yeah, the reason for this is the Baltic, right? There's a very narrow gap of international waters, international airspace that like various like US spy planes and shit go through and stuff. That's their like transit through the Baltic. And so one of the things that the Soviets do, both in retaliation for this and also just to fuck with Norway and Denmark, is just violate their airspace. Just send a MiG over to like wander around for a bit and see how long it takes for them to catch you. And so in this case, used as a pure interceptor, where the idea is there is a Soviet aircraft, go find it, go fetch. That works quite well. They run out of fuel a lot. Like there's a couple of stories I found of Norwegian pilots who are like, yeah, when I went in for landing, the fuel gauge was like below empty, and it sort of like coasted to a stop immediately.
At this point, you just glide in. You're just a glider. It's fine.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure this thing has a great glide ratio.
the little tiny stubby wings. Yeah.
Yeah, it can go 1 foot forward for every 5 feet down. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But the loss rate, like, so they don't have the best loss rate, but they have one of the least worst. Like Norway, they lose 14% of their total inventory over 22 years, but that's only 6 planes out of 43. So they don't do too bad. I don't think I could find any for Denmark, but there's some fun stories out of this that Alice can recount.
Yeah,
all I can say here is, we didn't actually have a hot war with the Soviet Union.
We didn't.
It didn't happen.
Yeah,
why are you
Canada never
crashing all
used
these
nuclear
planes?
weapons. It's weird. Like the Cold War has a body count, and not just in proxy wars. The Cold War has a body count in like Soviet pilots getting shot down by American pilots and shit like that.
It's the fucking Red October quote: a war with no battles, a war with like no victories, only casualties.
Yes. So my story about this is so at one point the Norwegians do a fraternal visit to German naval aviation, who are also flying starfighters. It's like a short hop over the Baltic, like 20 minutes. You go there, have a nice time, fly back. When they fly back, Norwegian customs are waiting on the tarmac, having been tipped off, and they go to the Norwegian starfighters and they go, open the weapons base. So where do you keep the missiles in there? And the Norwegian pilots open them up, and 400 bottles of liquor fall out.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I mean, I've been to Norway once. Oslo Airport, duty free, advertises Swedish prices.
Someone thought they were so clever and worked out the coolest way to like smuggle alcohol across a customs border.
I would have done it to
ruin everything.
Yeah, and the cops ruined it. The other story about this is that they used one of these for a kidney transplant transport.
That's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, there's a patient in Oslo who like needs a kidney urgently, and the donor is in Tromsø, which is the far
Paris
end
of the North.
Yeah. So they just they put it on a helicopter. They take the helicopter to a starfighter, put the kidney on the starfighter, and from them calling the Air Force to help, to kidney inside dude is like 5 hours. It's pretty good.
Wow,
that's pretty good. Yeah.
I'm always sort of emotional whenever the 1 or 2 times in my life I've ever seen an airport, or not an airport, a highway shut down for an organ transplant, and you just see an ambulance going by you at Mach Jesus. You're like, all right, I can take 10 minutes out of my day to be inconvenienced to watch an ambulance do 135.
I kind of like it with
Thank
this too.
you, motorcycle crash victim.
Genuinely, like a peaceful application of having an air force, of being like, well, we found a civilian use for this Mach 2 fighter jet, which is organ transplants.
It's like turning the tanks it's like turning old BMPs into like firefighting vehicles.
Yeah.
Also, I lied. Apparently, I did have Denmark statistics on here. I forgot the magical art of scrolling down. They lost 24% of their fleet out of 51. So yeah, so not great, but still not the worst one on this list, because there's still ones who do worse, and also ones who do far more stupider, as we'll find on next slide.
Yeah. This is
go to Jupiter to get
more stupider. Yeah.
this is the
we're just going to the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Boys go to the Netherlands to get embroiled in a political scandal.
They sure do. And to do blackface. Don't forget about blackface.
That's true.
This is true, yes.
I hate the fucking Dutch.
Lockheed pays the fail son heir to the throne, Prince Bernhard.
Whoa, a fail son in the Netherlands? Whoa, really? Are you sure?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
A fail son in a royal family as well, which makes it even
but
weirder.
It's funnier because it's the fucking Dutch, Alice.
Yeah. And who remembers that, the Netherlands has a monarchy at this point? But Prince Bernhard, he gets paid $1 million. He is like much cheaper than a Nazi. He's like only the 10th of the price of a Nazi. To adopt the F-104, to get the F-104 adopted.
You got to be pretty down bad as a monarch that $1 million is going to sway your opinion. I mean,
you're
a small country.
Look, at that point, you're only 1 or 2 steps removed from like Prince Leka of Albania.
I could
Well,
get
then maybe it's
half
the other
a
way around.
bungalow in Palo Alto for that much money.
Maybe it's the other way around though. Maybe it's like you already have everything you need, so it's like just a way of keeping score. You know?
Right.
Yeah, I could see that.
I
But
would
all I
ask
know is
for
there's
more.
there's only one king of the Netherlands I will recognize, and his name is Johannes Vonk.
That's right.
I'm just like, if you were like, okay, I'm going to offer you $1 million as a bribe when I already have money, or I'm going to offer you, like, I don't know, a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle bourbon. I would respect the Pappy Van Winkle more than $1 million.
Yeah, give me the pappy.
The other thing about
I want
Bernard
to be
though
pat
is that
smeared, bro.
he's gross, terrible at getting bribed. Like this immediately leaks, and like every
a Dutch person's terrible at something.
yeah,
Oh,
every
you know what else is terrible at?
journalist
Winning World Cups.
It's
You're also terrible at getting me money.
This guy must have gotten like $50 from a bicycle manufacturer around the same time, and that's how the Netherlands became a biking paradise.
Yeah,
Maybe he could have taken more money to fix the fucking game, so I could have profited too, jackass.
So every journalist in the Netherlands immediately starts asking about this.
Shut up.
And they ask Bernard about this, and because he's a fucking king in waiting, he just goes, "I am above such things."
Apparently not.
I don't have to answer questions.
It's the fucking John Mulaney. It's like, so I said no, like a liar.
Yeah, it's like I am a prince. I don't have to answer to you. And this damn near brings down the fucking monarchy. His mum,
but it doesn't though.
Add to that the list of things that should have died but didn't. Right up there with Strauss, Steinhoff, Ian Smith, and now the Dutch monarchy.
Yeah, his mum has to threaten to abdicate.
My goodness!
If they don't drop all
Leave
of the
her
investigation
boy
into
alone.
this.
Yeah.
What really would have happened if the Queen of the Netherlands have abdicated? What was really gonna happen?
They would have won the goddamn World Cup.
You're right. That's the point of divergence of the alt history of them winning the World Cup is the Queen of the Netherlands had to abdicate.
Yeah,
it's so weird that she did this.
It feels like, to me they played their hand pretty well here. I mean,
but to go, I will abdicate if you don't leave my bribe taking failson alone, and have no one call her bluff is embarrassing.
That's what Robert Moses did.
God,
always threatened to resign
when
if he
was
questioned.
king of the Netherlands.
She learned from the king.
Yeah.
I didn't put any details in about how many of these they lost. I assume it's many. Next slide, please.
Yeah, probably. Probably not as many as Belgium though, because boy, did Belgium. So they ordered initially 101 of these, but they actually lost one before.
What does Belgium need with 100 fucking fighter planes?
Something Congo, something uranium mines.
Ally,
but they ordered 101 and one crashed before they even delivered it.
Yeah, you want an even number.
Off to a good start.
Yeah.
But they had, I think, the second worst loss rate after Canada. They lost 41% of their total inventory, 41 airframes out of the 100 delivered over 20 years.
Well, that's why you want a nice round number.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that all of these, as part of that license production agreement, were produced in Belgium by the Belgian aviation company. So maybe they just really suck at building aircraft.
Well, that's got to be Lockheed's line, right? Is maybe you should build the plane better.
I say, sucks to suck. Maybe next time, try not to commit man-made horrors behind my comprehension in Congo.
That's right.
Next slide, please.
The paint makes it look like an alligator.
It does kind of look like an alligator.
Italian month will never end. Italian month is forever. Curiously, we don't know if Lockheed bribed the Italian Air Force to license build a slightly modified Fiat F-104. We do know that they bribed them to take the C-130 and a bunch of other stuff.
Uh-oh. Am I gone again?
No.
Shit.
Yeah.
You're not. You're not.
Can you not hear us? It's gonna be fine.
Or will
it be fine?
So KD has a warning, which is the recommended minimum memory is 8 gigabytes.
Oh, pathetic.
That would explain why maybe he has gone away twice now, although I figured it'd be more regular than it
Hello?
was.
Hello.
Yes, you're back.
We didn't lose him. We lost him, but we didn't lose us.
Yes. You
Guys
lost
now?
us. We didn't lose you.
You hear us?
Oh my god.
I'm gonna kill myself.
Don't do that.
I'm not going to kill myself.
We have to
Just,
do like if any of us
yeah,
kills
refresh
ourselves, it
the-
has to be like a murder-suicide pact among the whole podcast.
I have just the episodes for you.
Yeah. Justin, what you
Yeah.
may have to do is refresh.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello,
Okay,
you're here.
was
Yes.
that just me or was that everyone?
Oh, the last second, right before we restarted everything.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we're good. It was just
Yes.
you.
Yes, actually, we could still hear
Okay.
you, but you couldn't hear us.
Yeah. Curious.
Yes, it's.
Is it just me and you?
I got a
No.
warning
No, I can
here,
hear you.
KD, that
Wait.
says.
Okay, good.
Oh my god.
Uh,
So KD,
yeah, I don't know what happened. My internet's fine, but
the warning on my side says you don't have enough memory in your
Yeah.
computer.
I don't think you
Yeah,
can
but-
hear all of us.
Oh my god. So what he has to do when he comes back, if he comes
Download
back,
more RAM.
is wait. Yeah, download more RAM. No, I think the way to do this would be to wait for his files to download to his computer so that then
Only
they're
Liam is
out
there.
of computer memory and into storage. And then he could come back and do the rest of the podcast.
You
Yeah.
only hear me.
Katie, who can you hear? Can you hear anyone?
the hell is going on?
Oh boy.
All right, I'm going to restart this.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Fire in the hole. Assuming I can.
That's fucking weird.
Oh my
Let
god.
me stop it.
The entire thing. Hold on.
Oh my god.
I have no idea what's going
Pause.
on. This is so
I can hear
weird.
you.
Stop. Pause. Stop.
Okay,
Pause.
you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay,
I can
good.
hear you as well.
I thought, okay. All right,
Okay,
well,
so-
you could hear me, but it says you're the only other one in the room with me.
Don't worry about it. Alice, can you hear him?
Yeah, I can hear everyone. Can you
All
hear
right,
me?
just keep
I
going.
can hear
just
everyone
keep
as
going.
well.
Just keep going. If we have to, we'll use the locals. Just keep going. I'm too tired for this. Just keep going.
I can't hear anyone else other than you.
You can't hear anyone else other than me, though.
It literally
Yeah.
says Liam's the only one in the room, and that
says
I'm
I'm
the only
the
one I
only
can
one.
hear that is Liam.
Just reload the page, Ross.
And I can't stop the record. All right. All right.
reload it. Just reload it.
In a
All right. world
where
world,
we can run Zencaster.
in an
Probably
in
not.
an Italy, in an Italian world.
Mhm.
Yes.
Italian. Is this
The grim
is
future
this
of
the
Italy.
fucking 3 arrows logo down here?
I don't think so. I don't think they have a SOCDEM Italian Air Force squadron. I think it just looks like it.
I think that would be really.
That would
really
require them
kinda
having
funny,
that would require them having an Italian government that's anywhere like left of Attila the Hun.
Yeah.
though. Mm,
Yeah.
So
um,
this thing was an Italian service nicknamed the Barra Volante, which no prizes for guessing, but guess anyway.
Well, I
I'm
can't
not gonna
say it. I
guess.
can see.
I can see the notes as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fuck
Yes.
me, of course you
I
can.
don't want to guess.
Flying coffin. The flying coffin. As-
I'm
I'm flagging too, man. As you may be able to tell by the
so much.
stylish low visibility livery, Italy kept these in service until 2005 because fuck
Why?
pilots. Fuck pilots. Dead pilots make their dicks hard, you know?
They love these things so much they made more of them on their own of their own volition. They built 246 of their own variant they called the F-104S Super Starfighter.
Superstar. Shut up.
They were like all in on this. They were like, this is our thing.
Is it Super Starfighter or is there like an Italian name for that? Is it like
It's il Super Starfighter.
Yeah, the Superstar
Oh,
fight. It's like, it's
Superstar
got a-
fighter, yes.
What's Italian for super? I forget.
Super,
that, man.
probably.
Yeah,
No,
I know.
I
And I
thought
know
there was
in Russian, super is just super.
Super.
I thought there was like a good Italian word for that.
Let's
and
go, motherfucker.
But no surprise is they lost a ton of these things. They lost 38% of their total inventory over like 25 years. They basically lost 15 aircraft every 100,000 flying hours.
Italy's got terrain as well. It's one of the countries that
I
does.
love the Italians stubbornly just being like, no. Next revision will fix it. Shut up.
Yeah.
Next revision, Joe
I
Tomo.
guess,
I promise.
I mean, Berlusconi loves the Russians, so I guess much like Russians, Italians just yearn for the void.
Yeah, by
But
the transitive property.
but they also would sell these two. Next slide.
Oh
I think
boy.
the Italians yearn for the void in a very different way. It's
Oh wow, this is hideous.
Yeah, it's it's Turkey.
Oh,
it's a big fat guy.
the
Turkish among us. This is
This is tough.
famously, above board defense procurement Turkey. So in July of 1974.
Hey, do you like drones? Alice, do you like drones?
Love
Do you
them,
like drones?
Can't get enough. Can't get enough.
Drones. Everything is drones now. The future is Turkey. My face just melts off my body.
So,
Boy, that's a really good impression of my Twitter feed.
before the invention of drones in July 1974, that's not before the invention of drones, neither here nor there, a Saudi arms dealer by the name of Adnan Khashoggi, Jamal's uncle, had tried to sell 18 of these F-104s to F-104Ss to Turkey for like $77 million. And they signed this deal at the end of 74. 75, they buy 22 more of these for another 100 million. And this also immediately leaks that this is a bribery scandal. And Turkey at this time, then and now, has a pretty close lock on the media. And so what ends up happening is the fix gets put in that the commander of the Air Force resigns for not taking a bribe. Like, he resigns in disgrace for a bribe that he didn't take.
Been there. We've all had our moments.
So like, I did nothing wrong. However, I will be resigning because of the things that I didn't do wrong, because it has become unsustainable for me to continue in my position as guy who does nothing wrong.
Normal functional country.
Yeah, the idea was that
I'm pretty sure I've
Khashoggi.
sent a resignation letter that said basically that.
Yeah, the idea is that Khashoggi like offered
Please
this
don't look
guy
at
a
my filing
bribe,
cabinet.
and then he just didn't take it, but then resigned because he was so honorable.
This reminds me of
Seriously, this livery is fucking hideous.
it's not very good. Yeah. This
The
reminds
sky is
me
blue,
of
right,
like,
boys?
Yeah.
in the Pentagon Wars, how like everyone else orders the Bradley fighting vehicle, but it's fixed so it works better. Here it's like everyone orders the same goddamn plane, and it's actually worse, and they use it in worse ways.
Yeah.
Hilariously, up until recently, when we're giving some to Ukraine, the only other country that got the Bradley fighting vehicle in real life was Saudi Arabia.
Hell yeah.
I thought we gave F-104s to Ukraine. That'd be pretty funny.
We should dig them out just for that.
Through sort of similar deals, some of these F-104s go to Greece, which means we could have had a shooting war between Greece and Turkey with F-104 on F-104.
I mean, we
shooting sort of in quotes there.
I mean, we may yet still have one where they're shooting F-16 like missiles at one another. Hold on tight.
Yeah,
they just crash into each other.
The sound of Greek-Turkish relations. And Jordan gets some.
Cyprus into a crater, right?
Yeah. Jordan gets some, and then next slide, please. Now,
you get
Spain,
a country that has famously done nothing wrong ever, but they did.
This isn't the Spanish Air Force. Where's that picture of that car being sent into low Earth orbit?
These
Spanish
guys,
Space Force.
They did the impossible. They pulled off the F-104 100% complete no-hit challenge live on stream. They didn't lose a single one of these. To be fair, they only bought 21, and they only had them in service a relatively short while, from like 1965 to 1972, but they didn't lose a single one. And part of the reason for this was they actually used it for the reason it was designed. They used it as a fair weather interceptor. But crucially, All this happens when Francisco Franco is still in charge, so you do not, in fact, have to hand it to them.
You do not.
Can we somebody imposed maybe insert that picture of the PM's car being sent into low Earth orbit, please?
Oh, Luis Carrero Blanco? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You know, a woman got arrested and like jailed in Spain like a couple of years ago for tweeting a joke about that.
Oh, come on!
Come on.
It's legitimately remarkable how much fascism is still kicking around in Spain.
They sent the guy to the fucking moon. That shit's funny.
Yeah.
I thought the Germans were the ones who were supposed to not be able to take a joke. Spain, get your shit together.
Yes. No, the Germans can't take a joke enough that we actually forced them into retreat.
Surrender. Hell, we just got here. And that's how I approach this podcast.
That's right. But they never crashed one of these.
Yeah. But they were fascists, so we don't have to hand it to them. Next slide.
Yeah.
Oh, Dad. Is this an artist rendering or a picture? Because I kind of like it.
That's just a straight black and white photo, and I think it looks fucking great.
She looks good.
Really good. Yeah.
This is
good.
Pakistan.
Oh
where-
boy.
We finally get to see what happens when you actually use these in a shooting war.
Yeah, they nicknamed this Badmash, which is like a low life, literally. And
yeah, what's the primary language of Pakistan? It's not Urdu. It's not Pashto.
It is
Urdu. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's Urdu for flying coffin?
No, this is cool because now they give it a nickname that suggests that it is dangerous to other pilots, which no one had thought of before.
Yeah, first time we've had this happen.
I like the idea of low life just because of the 60 feet off the air principle. It's like, we basically have to hashtag hella flush, bro.
You're flying this thing, you're like, I'm a piece of shit.
You're wearing a backwards fucking snapback.
Florida Georgia line is blaring out of the one mono speaker I assume you should be using for communications.
Yeah.
That's not a joke. I love Florida Georgia line.
So in 1965, India and Pakistan go to war for the second time in large part over Kashmir, and the Pakistan Air Force has one squadron of these F-104s, which does pretty well, actually.
They do fine. It's the Chernobyl line. They lose about as many as they shoot down, but they do shoot things down. Like I use the Chernobyl line, not great, not horrible.
My favorite detail, my favorite story of this. Well, first of all, one of the Indian pilots who's flying a MiG-21 because India buys all of its aircraft from the Soviets. He gets shot down by an F-104 and flies his dying aircraft into the aircraft that kills him. And is
I've done that in Battlefield too.
Yeah.
Oh, so he plays War Thunder.
Yeah. Posthumously awarded the highest military decoration the Indian Air Force can give him. The other detail about this is during the course of the war, all of Pakistan's reconnaissance planes get shot down. They don't have fucking satellites or anything else. So I need to see what effect all of this is having. They need to fly over the nearest Indian Air Force base to see if any of the bombing sorties have been successful, things of this nature. And so the CO of this number 9 Air Superiority Squadron gets hold of one of the two-seater unarmed training F-104s and takes the film camera mounting off of a larger aircraft. And this is like a huge camera. If you've ever seen like an aircraft reconnaissance camera, you can just about hold some of them in your hand, and goes, I will sit in the back holding this up against the canopy, and then we're going to get another guy to fly me over this airbase inverted at like 50 feet, 600 knots, just scream past. I will take a bunch of photos with my hands and we'll see how we do.
And this is how you know that they were trained by the RAF.
I know that this is not how it happened, but I'm imagining a guy with the old timey camera on the tripod with the cloak,
Yeah.
and he's got the big the
just
thing
hold
that you
still. Would you
hold up
just
with
hold
the
still?
the thing you hold up with the flash powder, you know.
Yeah.
What if Top Gun was a silent film?
Starring Charlie Chaplin. With like jaunty piano tunes as whatever a MiG-17 gets turned into mulch.
Yeah. Playing Kenny Loggins, but like on cheery 1910s piano.
Yes. I am aware the MiG-17 was a good aircraft. Shut the hell up.
An American photo player.
So these
we get
do
that,
okay.
that burnt noise, but on like I don't know, wax.
Wax cylinder.
These are okay. They get one of the first, I believe, beyond visual range kills with a Sidewinder where they shoot down an Indian Canberra.
They do fine.
It's all right. And then the war ends, and the US. Well, as soon as the war starts, the US applies sanctions to both India and Pakistan. India doesn't give a shit because they all buy all their stuff from the Soviets. Pakistan is like fucked immediately because they buy all their shit from the Americans. And all of a sudden they can't get parts for these things, which are very finicky, delicate aircraft, and they can't keep them in service for much longer at all. All of them are gone within like 7 years' time.
Yeah, they buy French stuff, I think, and so then that leaves only one other country that actually ends up shooting anything down with these things, which is next slide. Not actually consider their country if you want to remain on the good side of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, the government of currently in place in Taipei, rogue breakaway province of the People's Republic.
Yes, of course. Yeah, it's China. That's
John Cena had to apologize in Mandarin.
Policy on this podcast, but it's actually for Taiwan, just for the yucks. Get mad at us in the comments. This is a bonus episode. You already.
There was a long time.
Okay.
There was a long time with
That's
a KMT.
The fourth episode that we're gonna get canceled on.
I only did 2. What's your? Oh, I know what's your third one. Yeah.
There was a long time.
Alice, what's your poison pill episode?
Ooh, fucking gender. I don't know. No, actually, you know what my poison pill episode is NATO. The thing where I said, hey, check out fucking Baron von Nazi Skullface. The episode where I argue, hey, it's actually good. That's gonna be the episode that I use to cancel us. But so also speaking of sinecures, you know the Kuomintang in Taipei, Taiwan, maintained a full like electoral caucus for the rest of China. Like you could be a member of parliament for like mainland China in Taiwan and do nothing, but you still had like a 600 member legislature.
I mean, like they only gave up actively trying to overthrow the government on the mainland like in the 70s. Like they only gave up it then.
That sounds pretty fun. I would love to have a job like that.
This thing looks like it's struggling.
It's having a time.
It looks
say
bad. Also,
what exactly is going on here?
Right? This thing.
Yeah.
This
looks like an artifact on an AI generated image.
This thing looks like dog
I'm
shit.
actually not sure what the hell that is, and I'm the one that picked out this photo. I don't know what that is.
Some kind of weird rocket-assisted takeoff thing shooting right out the back of the fucking drop tank? I don't know.
Well, the U.S. Air Force, we originally sent these to Taiwan very early after they were inducted during the second Taiwan Strait crisis to defend Taiwan, and later they'd buy their own. And in 1967, they got in a dogfight with a bunch of Chinese. I was wrong earlier when I said the J6 was a MiG-17. I was wrong. It's a MiG-19 over disputed islands that are actually Taiwan still controls islands that are literally like a mile or two off the coast of China. It's fucking nutty. Look them up on the map.
The not touching can't get mad policy. Yes,
exactly. Look up Kinmen and Quemoy Islands, and you'll go, what the fuck? But they managed to shoot down 2 MiGs, but they also lost one with F-104. They're not sure if it was shot down or just crashed before it got back to base. But I mean, again, kind of a mixed bag. Kelly Johnson actually said this particular fight showed the strengths and weaknesses because of the F-104. It was good to accelerate. It was good at high altitude, but it was not really a turner. Again, it was more of an interceptor than a fighter.
Yeah, you don't, again, corners are for pussies. Cannot emphasize this
Muscle
enough.
car. Muscle car.
But
Altitude is also for pussies.
Yeah, exactly. Why go high when go low do trick?
Yes.
I've been doing
Crash into a windmill.
There's superiority. I've been going low my whole life, man.
Fuck you, Don Quixote.
You like
Liam-
that, you Francoist bitch?
Liam's spiritually been an F-104 pilot his entire life, and he didn't even know it.
Yeah, Starfighter driver. Yeah.
These
Yeah.
things were like the
You
only
guys keep going. I
Italian.
gotta piss real bad. Keep
Oh, yeah.
going though.
Only
Yeah.
the Italians beat out the Taiwanese in terms of longevity and service. I couldn't find any accident figures. They probably did fine. But interestingly, they got some of these surplus from the last country on this list, which is next slide. Red circle.
These
Wow.
look really good.
The
Yeah, that
Japanese
actually
know
does
how
look
to
really good.
the Japanese know how to paint a fucking plane, man.
Yeah, they know what they're about.
Mm-hmm.
So Japan.
That's because first they draw an anime girl, and then
They
derive
they-
the paint scheme from
Curiously, this is not the slide that has an anime girl on it. I don't know how I fucked this up. But so wait, did I write the slide or did you?
I think you wrote most of it, and I put some stuff in there. I
Okay,
can read
well-
it if you want.
No, it's fine. I'll just recite as written. So
that.
Japan,
This is
like,
recitation.
yeah. Japan also does well out of this because they use them as daylight, fair weather, interceptor. You put sort of blue sky over this thing, it's fine. And what's interesting is while Germany is adding all of this bloat, adding all of this shit, and advancing into the F-104G, Japan goes, hey, can we have that but without all of the stuff? And so they get the F-104J, which is that but pared back again, which is like weird sort of like meandering course.
They
of
literally
development.
did return with a V.
Yeah. Just like give me the like retro F-104.
But I got conflicting info on the loss rate here. I had one source say they lost 15% of all the planes they got, which was like 210. I had another source that said they only lost 3. But I mean, like, either way, they have one of the least worst attrition rates over 24 years. They built, and also most of these were built under license by Mitsubishi. So maybe compared to like Belgium, the Japanese are just better at building a plane.
Maybe.
But overall, these things didn't do so bad on their own as aircraft, but they did create a whole lot of drama in Japanese society tangentially, which we will see on next slide with this picture that Alice put in, which I think is one of the most hilarious. He looks like a
Yeah.
Wojak.
Oh my god.
This is the Virgin former Japanese Prime Minister Kakue Tanaka coming back to Japan in 1989 after having been exiled in the 70s. And the reason why he got exiled is because he was part of the sort of like unraveling of. We've been talking about all the different times Lockheed bribed motherfuckers over these. And it wasn't just this. They were bribing motherfuckers for the C-130. They were bribing motherfuckers for the the L-1011. All number of these things. And
They're good products, yeah.
yeah, listen, it's a good product. Here's $10 million. And
Let's do this, it's a bad product. Here's $10 million.
oh god, I missed out on a fucking slide, which I will send to Dev and ask them to include now, which is a picture of Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands and his mum.
I know the exact picture you're talking
returning
about.
from Italy because of developments in the Lockheed scandal, and the Queen is holding her dog in between her and the photographer. It's a little tiny shitty dog. Yeah, so this like starts to unravel in Japan first, and it then traces back to the Netherlands and to Italy and to West Germany, and it suddenly becomes very clear that like Lockheed has just been bribing everyone as a course of business. In Japan, this goes through the Air Force Chief of Staff, it goes through the Finance Minister, and it goes through the Yakuza. It goes through the mob. It goes through a guy called Yoshio Kodama, who is a sort of like fixer. He's like a political consultant, ultra nationalist, power broker, secret society member. one-time bodyguard, things of this nature. And he sort of like was the guy who did all of the deals in like right-wing Japanese politics. And so this all starts to unfurl very, very
Got to
quickly.
unmute myself. Alice, did you just find the Google image result for bribery?
Yes.
I was about
Yeah.
to say it's impressive that they bribed them in euros.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Back in the 50s.
I was like, I'm surprised they have photos of this.
Very,
I
very
didn't
advanced.
think they,
Listen.
the European steel and coal community did start fairly early on, but
Back then they called them Euro coal bucks.
Very, very forward thinking. God, I would buy some Euro coal bucks. That's
What I was
Oh
gonna
my
say,
God,
because I
they
forgot
just
to
give
unmute
you
myself, was I just love the idea of just I can picture the Queen and her idiot fucking Habsburg ass looking son, and just goddamn, dude. I will say I know I'm not the best anarchist in the world, but if there's one thing I am the best in the world, it's being an anti-monarchist.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like the second we had a king instead of a queen, I was like, queen, bad enough. So we had a king. You expect me? No, fuck you. Absolutely
not. Yeah.
But so this
And we
precipitates a
thought
lot.
nation states were a bad idea, just blaring in the background.
Yeah. So this precipitates a lot of bullshit. All of Lockheed's management pretty much is compromised because they've all been found like holding a big suitcase full of cash that's immediately sprung open and like thrown $100 bills
handing
everywhere.
it over to Tony Soprano-san.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mayor Quimby-san poking his head in through the door. Did I hear a briefcase open?
And this leads the US to pass the single most violated federal law after marijuana, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Means
A law famous for working.
Yeah, if you are an American company, you can't bribe someone abroad or the Justice Department will have your ass, allegedly.
I'm going to say this. I know we have to uphold principles of socialism and internationalism and, all this other stuff. I don't believe the government should be interfering in bribing foreign governments. I think you should just be able to do that if you want to.
Libertarian
What do you
Party
care?
Congress,
What do you
23.
care?
This is the other country's responsibility
Let
to
them enforce
prosecute.
it. No,
I'm sorry.
exactly. No. All right. We're
Yeah,
up to
why are you
5,
blaming us for
6
your
cancelable
corruption?
episodes? 6
Yes.
cancelable episodes?
I'm sorry. You could have just refused the money.
Right.
Yeah,
you could have done better. Hashtag
shouldn't
be
all-
better.
This shouldn't be all on us. This is internationalism means everyone. We shouldn't be having to hold all the burden here. Just stop taking the bribes.
There's some real sort of like Department of Justice like overreach on this. Like, essentially if you get bribed anywhere, so long as you get bribed through a US financial institution, and if you get paid anything anywhere by anyone, some of it moves through a US financial institution. The Justice Department can get your ass for it. Which we love financial warfare.
Sometimes they might want to do that if it's advantageous to them. Sure, yeah.
This is how they like seized all of those Russian oligarchs' yachts and stuff. Is like, did you buy it with dollars? Because if you did, then the United States is taking your yacht.
I will
Did
say,
you buy it with dollars? Brackets Australian.
my
dollary
favorite
days?
dumb thing that the United States does is, and I know U.S. imperialism bad. Obviously, all imperialism is bad, but I think it's very funny when we do imperialism in law enforcement to European countries. Like when
you're going to America jail.
Frog marched all those FIFA executives out of their Swiss hotel rooms. U.S. Marshals just being like, if we can't win the sport, we'll make it unhappy for everybody else.
Look, like I know we're all assumedly like some degree of anti-carceral state, but some motherfuckers just need to go to jail, and some motherfuckers includes FIFA.
FIFA needs to go to jail.
Well, this is the thing. Their greatest crime,
Supermax.
Their greatest crime was humiliating John Kerry, something which could not be allowed to stand. Because he was, and Bill Clinton, both of them were there for the U.S. World Cup bid, and then Carter like bribed it out from under them, and therefore everybody got arrested.
Those guys. We should fuck up those guys.
Oh, Carter?
I mean, yeah.
I thought you were talking about Bill Clinton.
Before he
He's fine.
before he like
You can
became
come and get
senile.
me if you want, asshole.
Bill Clinton just in there with an M13, like, come and take it.
Bill Clinton, come on the pod.
No, don't do that. Don't do
Before
that.
he lost it,
That would be pretty funny.
King Salman of Saudi Arabia had a good line about Qatar, which is he said it's an oil rig with a TV station on it, which is true.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, before next slide, I have to do this. Hello and welcome to Well, There's Your Problem. It's a podcast about engineering disasters with slides. My name's Bill Clinton.
The delirium
I'm the
has
person
set
who's
in. We
speaking
need
right now.
2 hours.
Say,
2 hours and 26 minutes.
The 2016 presidential
This is-
election episode.
This is going to be the podcast we're canceled about, not the ones we came up with hypothetically. We've
Yeah,
already done it right
yeah.
now.
No. We're
Flying a
doing
Starfighter into the
we're
Auschwitz
doing
sign.
the poison pill episodes. We're doing
So
the poison
this-
pill episodes.
The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act is not the weirdest consequence of the Lockheed scandals. The weirdest consequence
yourself.
I'm going
of
to
the
fly
Lockheed
the
scandals.
F-104 directly into the shipping container stadium.
Pretty
Qatar.
close.
Almost.
Next slide, please. The weirdest
You're-
consequence of the Lockheed bribery scandals was 9/11 brackets Japanese.
Oh
So,
my god.
What the fuck is happening here?
So-
Bro, what is so for a little bit of behind the scenes action. I keep so I don't so you people can't hear my clicks and typing because I get yelled at on every podcast I'm on for that. I
Yes.
watch sports while we record this on mute, right? So I have so I have a split window with the Bruins game on one and then the notes but I wasn't looking at the notes and I just saw the fucking whatever nudity sex bomb cult shit this is.
In the immortal words of Mike Stacklaza, all right, back to 9/11.
Yo, I don't understand why people give us money. I mean, thank you, patrons, but goddamn.
Yes.
All right,
It's
so now
because
that
we
we're
come up
also
with
we're
things like this.
Yeah, I'll be damned how you get my $2 a month.
happy to announce that we are transitioning to softcore pornography now.
That's right.
Softcore pornography brackets Japanese.
So
I don't want to
We're
throw cocky.
getting more of those anime missiles up here, right?
that's right. I love it when she make me go. So she on my delight.
Thank you.
So we talked
The missile
about
knows where it is because it knows where it is.
So we talked about Yoshio Kodama, the fucking Yakuza guy, right? The guy who's a fixer. Well, he, as a consequence of the like bribery scandal, he he has a stroke basically, and what he's recovering from this stroke, he's like confined to his like mansion, which you see here in Tokyo. Now, a disillusioned, ultra-nationalist, softcore porn actor, seen here on the left, called Mitsuyasu Maeno, who is also a private pilot, shows up at the airport dressed as a kamikaze and goes, "I am shooting a kamikaze-themed porno." And gets into a Piper Cherokee light aircraft.
I just want to say, if you're in, I disagree with the existence of the TSA. I think it's stupid as security theater and so on and so forth. But if you are in the TSA right now, someone shows up in line dressed as a kamikaze. This is a red flag.
Yes.
He gets into this little Piper Cherokee and he flies around over Tokyo looking for this house, which he eventually finds. And
I don't
he
even know where it is.
and
He doesn't even know where it is.
he's
He's just flying around looking for this thing. This is why I had to recommend this to Alice, not just because of the plane being dumb, but just all the dumb stuff that this plane leads to. Like, why did you just look at this shit?
You look at this fucking house, it's like one story. The only way you could identify it is that the roof line changes once. I mean, it's in fucking Tokyo. You know how many buildings there are in Tokyo? Like a whole shitload, because
This
lots
man
of
must
people
have been a
live there.
fucking eagle eye. This man must have had like
Yeah.
extra sensory perception.
The spirit of the kamikaze, imbued him with the ability to find this fucking house, and he
The spirit of the
9/11's it.
kamikaze would have had a miss.
Well, he doesn't miss. He
He was a
perfectly
superhuman.
Look, he was half kamikaze, half 9/11, and the 9.5 was the half that actually hit the
and
house.
100% porn star, and he perfectly 9/11's this dude's house. And the funniest thing is, he 9/11's the house. He dies instantly, right? Of course. The guy he's trying to kill, he's just in another room and he's fine. He's just,
Amazing.
He just fucking.
Could have brought a bigger plane.
Yeah.
He
Like the
lives
plane
for
from the
7
movie
years.
Plane.
Starring Gerard Butler. Yes.
Yes.
He
No, that's what
he
a four probably would've
survives
done the job.
another 7 years after this, and this is just my favorite Japanese ultra nationalist assassination attempt, because it's like, what do we do? Fucking kamikazes, I guess. Perfectly obliterates wrong side of the dude's house.
Oh God.
So, what does this have to do with the F-104?
This
Nothing.
all happened because of the scandal that got like it's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It does go back to the F-104 because the F-104 bribery scandal is why the guy got fucking like forced to resign disgrace, which forced this guy to decide I'm gonna 9/11 him, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, he
Breeds
was-
stupid.
He was what was called a kuramaku, a fixer, and he had been paid by Lockheed to get the Japan Air Self-Defense Forces to accept the F-104, amongst other things. And in recompense of like this coming out and him, sort of damaging the credibility of the Japanese far right, this Nazi porn star tries to 9/11 his house.
Just the F-104 just leads to a series of really weird, like sometimes tragedy and farce.
There's another example on the next
What
slide.
I'm seeing here is this house is remarkably resilient because
yeah.
he flew a plane into it.
It's a little
Right?
Piper
You know what's
Cherokee.
still there? Is the roof is still there.
Mm.
The other roof is still there. The firefighters have shown up. They've got enough time to get a news helicopter to take a picture. And like from the exterior, the house looks fine.
Just don't
this
build them
is a
like they used to.
Very unsuccessful assassination. I think one of the worst I've seen.
Well, we have a successful one on the next page.
Oh god.
And this time the
Yeah.
F-104 decided to do it on its own. We're going to talk I swear to God, we're almost to the end, guys. We're going to talk about the XB-70 Valkyrie and how the F-104 fucking assassinated it. It was originally just...
It's a cool plane.
It's a really cool plane. There is still one at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at the U.S. Air Force Museum. So luckily it's not like
Ooh.
completely gone. But it originally was designed as a nuclear-armed deep penetration strategic bomber in the late
wow.
50s. Yeah, but it kind of went out of the program got canceled in large part because what Alice was talking about earlier. The Soviets got really good at surface-to-air missiles, and the U.S. Air Force shifted to flying missions at low level, and being supersonic didn't quite matter as much then. But they kept around the two that they built because they found they were really useful for doing research for NASA and the Air Force on supersonic aircraft. Now, they have these two around. It's the mid-60s. Vietnam's getting started. You know, you need to show people, hey, the Air Force is great and doing good stuff. How about we do a photo op?
Yeah. Join the Air Force. It's cool.
Well, actually, this photo op was shot at the request of General Electric because they made the engines in all these planes, and they were like,
Oh,
"Hey,
Jesus Christ.
can you do a picture with all these planes next to each other with our engines? It'll be great."
For a
And
second there, you said General Electric, and I thought, oh, there's a general named Electric.
Yeah, me too.
yeah, this general, yeah, it's that fucking guy from Shark Girl and Lava Boy. He was a fucking General Electric sent him to the principal's office and him expelled.
General Electric and General Motors, they're big rivals.
So General Electric ordered this photo op. I'm starting a conspiracy theory now.
Yeah, the extra airframe is still puttering around in like Area 51 or something, you know.
Yeah.
But they order this photo op, and you might notice there with the orange tail off to the right, that is the F-104. And this is literally like one of those photos that's taken seconds before disaster. I didn't put the disaster one in because I just didn't feel
Too sad.
Yeah, but basically, as not long after this photo is taken, the F-104 slams into the top of the plane, slides back across it, shears the tail fins off. And the pilots at first didn't know what was happening. They said they felt like a bump, even though there's this huge flame. F-104 pilot killed instantly. Shortly after, this thing just goes into just a fucking tumble in an uncontrolled spin. Both of the pilots initially survive. They were like grievously injured. One of the two of them did manage to like live, I think, just barely, like by like the skin of his teeth, he managed to survive. But this is kind of like the F-104's most high-profile victims. Like this beautiful plane, and we're lucky enough it's not like sort of that Tupolev situation in Ukraine. We still have one of them, but it's just like it was just like it's a real big sort of scar on the soul of aviation enthusiasts. And yeah, so this is sort of like the most big oops. This is the F-104's sort of like biggest victim. I suppose it would have been bigger if it had killed Chuck Yeager, but he managed to get through that one.
Yeah.
Next slide. I think this is an Alice slide.
Yeah, so Lockheed like knows this has been sort of kind of a disaster. However, you know, we're in the business of sequels here in the military industrial complex. And so they want to try and build a new one, rebrand it a bit, but use as many of the same parts as possible, do as little to it as possible. And so that's what this is. The CL-1200 Lancer. Looks the same, is the same, you know, slightly different intakes and wing shapes and things of this nature, but it basically was going to do the same thing better. And no one was interested, most of all the US Air Force, because they had their new baby in the crib, the F-15. That was still the XF-15, I think, but like that was gonna be in service pretty soon. And so they wanted absolutely nothing to do with this, and it just withered on the vine. No one else was buying it. And so they never built more than this one mock-up. Next slide, please.
Yep.
So Lockheed struggles through the 80s. In 94, merges with Martin Marietta to create Lockheed Martin, becomes woke.
Yes.
Is that Condoleezza Rice? No, that's not Condoleezza Rice.
I don't think so.
No.
But they start putting the pronouns in the missiles and stuff.
Yes.
And you know, all of
It's
this.
a man or a woman or a non-binary person.
It's
They
a man if the gun is in it.
So the World War I tank categorization of gender.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
it's fun to count when we get to Pride Month how many defense contractors get rainbow logos.
Oh yeah, and then turn them off the second it's over.
The second it's over.
I do have a thought about this, which is for a long time I figured that when Lockheed Martin or whoever decided they were a trans ally, they were simply lying or cynically exploiting the stuff for their own gain. And then they did it often enough that some of the worst cunts in the world, starting with Putin and whoever else, decided, oh wait, there really is a globo-homo ideology that must be destroyed at all costs by military force of Lockheed Martin, the US government, the intelligence services, etc., to make me gay. And at this point, I feel a little like I have been involuntarily assigned to the team that also has Lockheed Martin on it, and I have some mixed feelings about that.
Welcome to the party, friend.
Yeah,
Banner being held up by a stretch of gay rebar.
yeah,
It's a very
yes,
gay
the gay
stretch of
rebar.
It's a
That's
gay
gay
rebar.
rebar.
It's
That
gay
gay
rebar that
rebar
has not yet been.
costs $10 million.
The gay rebar that gets put into the gay concrete.
Yeah.
They put gay. All right, I'm unfortunately I'm anti-gay at this point because I don't want any gay
It only took
rebar.
3.5 hours to make you homophobic. Yeah,
Jesus
so I,
well,
I-
you know,
I-
this it's between this and the gas stove shit, you know.
Yeah, so I feel like I still feel bad about defense contractors. However, I feel a lot better about various leaders of nuclear states saying we got to de-gay the world by force, knowing that we have a sort of $10 million gay rebar bulwark in between me and them, so it's complicated. As for the F-104, everyone drops it, apart from one organization. Next slide, please. One last rally. Yeehaw! NASA Space Cowboy shit. NASA!
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, it gets adopted by Nasser because everyone knows that Gamal Abdel Nasser was a huge fan of the F-104.
And they put this cool livery on it, but NASA loves the F-104 because it goes stupid fast and it tries to kill you all the time, which means it's great preparation for flying any spacecraft.
This is the version that nearly kills Chuck Yeager, and there's the famous scene about it in the 1980s film The Right Stuff, where it almost kills them, and I think they actually have an actual F-104 in that. But yeah, this is the thing that very nearly kills him out of everything he does.
Yeah, they put a reaction control system on it, so that this has vectored thrusters that you can use to control it at like Mach 2. And they keep one of these in flying condition, I believe, maybe even two of them. And it's still around. Fucking rules.
Yep.
Figure someone's got to have one in private ownership by now, and he like flies it around every once in a while, so he can crash it into a church steeple.
Yeah, look, only if you're flying it in West Germany.
Yeah. I think there are some in private hands, and yeah, maybe you can rent. You can buy an experience of going on one. Yeah,
but
directly into a low warehouse in Hamburg.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of aircraft that want to kill you that are made by Lockheed Martin, final slide, please.
Yeah.
I put this here for a reason, because I realize now it all makes perfect sense that you can draw a straight line between the F-104 and this thing.
Why does it have like drywall patching on it?
Should he paint over that? That's where they keep the stealth.
Well, actually,
you should probably paint over that. Like, I know it's like fine, but you should paint over that.
I think there's been discussions about this in aviation circles, and I think they're actually like, I think some of that might actually be on purpose, if I recall correctly. Like, I think there's been discussions about this. There's a question of how much of that is it supposed to be like that? How much
look like it's peeling?
Yeah. But
no, I think the drywallers just cheaped out. I think whole damn plane is made of gypsum board.
Just a uniquely ugly plane as well. It's just a hideous airframe.
It is flame retardant.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you could draw a basically a straight line between sort of the logic that ended up with the F-104 and the logic that gets you the F-35, because both of these on paper are they're not like, they're not terrible ideas. Like the idea of a stealth multi-role 5th generation fighter in itself is not a terrible idea. They just did it in one of the stupidest ways possible. And yeah, it's just it's once again, the problem isn't just like technical things, it's also like the societies that build them. Like, I don't want to just say it's capitalism, but a large part of it's just capitalism. At the end of the day, like, it all comes back to that. Also, I was wrong. I was thinking of something else. I was thinking of like an F-35 that had like mirror skin or something that was spotted at like Area 51. I don't know what those little like weird things there are for. I think it's just it's over my head. I'm not a scientist.
That would definitely be more noticeable on a mirrored one if you had drywall seams, which had not yet been painted.
We can't see it, and you can't either.
I assume there's some kind of panels for like pulling stuff like out for repairs or something. I'm guessing they're there for a reason. I just can't remember what the reason is.
No, they're not. This is
that's because this is a 4x8 sheet of drywall.
Yeah. All right.
And
wrap this bitch up.
Yeah.
This has been the like
Plane
history
talk.
of the F-104 Starfighter.
We've been talking about Plane, the movie Plane with Gerard Butler as the plane.
That's right.
In theaters now.
In theaters now.
4 hours.
Or on Usenet if you
yeah, it's a bonus. Who cares?
Yeah, and if you wanna see any of the sort of technical specs or manuals of the F-35, what you want to do is you want to log into the War Thunder forums.
It happened again. It keeps happening.
If you want to know if this is 2 hour or 4 hour drywall on this,
if you want to know if this is a 2 hour or 4 hour podcast.
God. Well, KD, thank you so much for coming on. If people want more of your content, where can they find it?
You can find me at @war_takes on Twitter and at Komodo Dad on Twitter. And thank you for having me on again. It was good to know that I didn't just make you all sick of me the first time.
No, quite the contrary.
The episode's so good we had to record it twice because some of us fell asleep in the middle of it.
I guess this is technically my third podcast with you all, but more crucially, it's my first podcast being edited by Devin. I'm being devited, so I hope you're having a nice day, Devin. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for subscribing to the Patreon. If you stole this one, whatever.
Understandable.
I actually have business after this. Sorry.
Oh God, are we getting audited?
No, we're not getting.
I was about to say I will have to use the restroom before we do the business.
Yeah, go.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.